Take a few minutes to make some comments before the agenda starts, the rest of the agenda starts. Jimmy, if you could sit down. Thank you. In terms of observers, I want to draw your attention to the materials on the seat. There are also some materials on the back table as well. Stand by for the results of item 3 on the agenda. Remember, to everyone, it's perfectly fine to stand up and move around. Curtis?
I'm sorry.
Thank you. See, that's the trouble when I learn your name. The 3 hours is a long time, so please feel comfortable to do that. Andrew? Andrew, the meeting has started. If you could finish and then...
I'll be finished.
Cool, thanks. Okay. Make sure, team, to update your email groups. We've had several changes since the last meeting. Also, the support times, the times for the support team meeting on the day after these meetings has been changed to 4 o'clock. They will still, instead of 11 o'clock. They will still be held in the Ellensburg School District offices at the end of 3rd Street, 3rd Avenue, which has just been seal coated, just as a warning for that. So, a couple comments. In talking with almost everybody in the last week and a half, I've heard a lot of frustration about how long it's taking for the process. And I have to admit that I also feel some frustration about this. This is a very challenging situation. So I would also, however, like to remind you of a couple things. For one thing, we cannot do everything first. We only have 180 minutes for each of these meetings. So just keep that in mind. Things will be gotten to. We cannot do everything perfectly. If this had been an easy thing to do, it would have been done many years ago and we'd all be doing something else right now. So that's something to keep in mind. Also, look at where we were just over a month and a half ago at our first meeting. There were a lot of concerns about fears in this group that it was going to be just a mouthpiece of the school board and the superintendent, and I would be willing to wager that if you asked Dick, Meg, or Paul, they would testify that this is anything but that. So keep that in mind. Also, transparency, that was another concern that was very strong at the beginning. Now, everything that the team sees, all that wad of documents, gets posted on the school district website by Jeff almost immediately, and it is available for anyone to read on the website. Also, all of these meetings are being videotaped, and they're available for viewing on YouTube if anybody wants to do that. Also, all of the emails that go out to the team also automatically go out to Lauren, our dedicated reporter from the Daily Record, so that that happens in there. It's really hard to be more transparent than that. We don't even do reply all, right? So there's no discussions, no decisions that are made in secret by email by this team. So I really think it is possible to do this job and do it in such a way that we will be proud at the end to say that we were part of this team. I'm going to hold that vision because you may not at this moment. So part of getting that done is using consensus, and part of that is using the pesky cards. I would encourage you to quickly take a look at these cards again, remind yourself of what the different colors mean in discussion, and also in calls for consensus. They really form part of the container for the messiness, the inherent messiness of what it is we're trying to do here. And it also makes you stop and consider what is it that you're really trying to contribute here. Do you have a question? Do you have a statement? I'll be starting to do process checks more closely this time. So again, pay attention to what it is these cards mean. We've had a lot of time in the last 3 meetings to get up to speed on past information, as well as having a chance to share, everyone having a chance to share what they felt was not heard in former iterations of this process. There's still a little bit of that to be done, or there's still some of that to be done, but we're beginning to put our focus more strongly on the future. What is it that this team needs, and how will the team get to the purpose for which it was formed, that is, finding a common vision for the middle school. Okay, enough of my comments. Let's dive into reviewing the agenda.
Just one sec.
Oh, yes.
This was distributed to you before the meeting, and this is a little warm-up activity before Mike and I present. So as you finish those, if you would just so kindly pass them our way, because if there's things that are in our presentation that is not what you want to know, we will quickly be able to adjust. So, okay, you can send them our way.
Okay, so everybody had a chance to look at the agenda version 3.0, and you have a copy of it in front of you, and the observers, you also have that. Any comments, any questions or clarifications, first of all, on the agenda, which is a yellow card, right? Or any changes to the agenda, which would be the blue card. Suggesting that. Okay, there were comments earlier coming to me about the need to look at the agenda for next time. That would be considered a change to this agenda, because right now there is no time to do that in this agenda. It's time for the team to start setting their own agendas in the meetings that will contribute to the transparency and also help get what needs to be done. Is anybody who talked to me about having that in this agenda going to say anything? Yeah.
Based on the email that you sent out earlier today, it sounded like we needed to take something off of the agenda, and I would propose that we take off the 720 activity, because some of the things that are decision criteria maybe haven't been discussed yet.
Okay. So we have a proposal to take off the item at the 720. The reason for taking something off was simply so that the agendas or a revised timeline could be discussed. Any questions or comments about that? Do people need more time? I'm confused here.
Is this a motion, or do we
No,
second
well, not
it,
yet.
or I agree, or whatever?
Okay, any comments or questions about that first? Yes, Jimmy, question, clarification?
My only concern is, and I guess it's a question, have we as a group ever discussed a main objective we have? Has that ever been discussed in the group, and do we agree on what our, not objective, our goal is? I know what the goal is in terms of our charge. Have we defined a specific goal that meets that goal, if you understand what I'm saying?
That's kind of what this is.
Okay, so that was a question. Somebody have, well, it sounds like it was a final comment.
I'm sorry.
No, that's fine, it's cool. It takes a while. Meg, did you have a comment? And then,
My comment is that I think that agenda item is kind of exactly what Jimmy asked about. I think we do need to get to it sooner rather than later, but I didn't read the email today, and I don't know what that's just come up.
Tor, did you have another comment?
Well, no, I was going to agree. I was going to say, I think that's what section, that's the way I read that section. But I also am just one of those people that I'd like more information before I have to jump. I mean, I would love to have some more direction in what we're doing. So I'm kind of on the fence, so I'm not really helping. I'll shut up. I'd like both. Can we take 10 minutes from that to discuss discuss the agenda. That's my proposal. We take 10 minutes from that half hour, or is it half hour? Yeah.
It's 20 minutes, oh yeah, it is half an
Half
hour.
hour. So take 10 minutes to discuss agenda and 20 minutes to discuss the other.
I don't think, given that it would be meeting in small groups, which is necessary
Oh, I see.
in order
Okay.
to get some more people involved in the discussions in the team.
Sure.
That would be,
Sure.
and setting the timeline may actually take more than 10 minutes, would be my guess. Okay, so we did have a proposal then to take out the 720 item. Lauren?
I wondered if it would be possible to, right after that 720 item, it's 750, consideration and call for consensus about scheduling additional meetings. So if we took Tor's suggestion, 10 minutes from that, plus added to the 10 minutes on scheduling additional meetings, because those two things seem so closely related as a topic of discussion.
Yeah, so the only concern about that, Lauren, would be that that 20 minutes is not enough to do the item at 7:20, the consideration and clarification of goals, which can be considered. Yes, Jimmy?
I'm going to recall my earlier comment because I had failed to remember that there will be an initial small group discussion.
Okay.
And I see where the time is necessary.
So that should be moved as a block, is basically, either today or the next meeting. So, yes, Steve?
I support moving the 720 item to another meeting, and when you and I met last week, or whenever it was, we talked about fleshing out the deliverable outline that I presented last time, which was one time when we as a group discussed where we might be headed. So if we could combine the 720 item at a different meeting with an update on the deliverable and progress on the deliverable, that might be a good thing.
Okay, so just to make sure that I understand what you're saying, Steve, that within that half an hour, there is more discussion about the deliverable and also some time to set to revise the timeline? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm suggesting, I'm supporting, I think it was Michelle who suggested moving the 720 item to a different meeting and adding to it at that meeting, presumably the next one, an update on the deliverable.
Oh, okay. So you're talking the update on the deliverable with this one,
Next time,
or whichever, yeah.
because I'm not prepared to do it now anymore.
Okay, so call for consensus. Want to make it clear what we're doing? What are we doing with the 720 is being moved? What will be put in that place? A discussion of timeline and agendas? Okay. Okay, call for consensus. Everybody in favor? Red? Whoa, I still did not say that. Green, please. We want to see green. Okay, great. All right. Great. So cool, we even have 2 more minutes. Okay, so next up is consideration of the Observer Comment Guidelines proposal. Again, this is proposal 2.0. That is, it's slightly different from the one I first put out. Jimmy had expressed some concerns about the first one. So we sat down together and talked about it and found out that we both had the same interest, that is to have community input and also have smoothly running and effective meetings. So we tweaked it just a little bit to add the opportunity for very short observer comments at the beginning of major discussions. And we were both feeling just fine about that. That's also a process that I would encourage all of you to take as we go along. Okay, call for consensus on adopting the Observer Comment Guidelines proposal. Okay, green is in favor, blue is, okay, great, okay. We're getting ahead. Yay. Okay, you have a question? Yes.
I want to say that the process worked extremely well, and I appreciate what Liz did and the way she reacted and developed this proposal. You saw all the papers out there on the chairs tonight, all of those things are additions, and I'm really pleased to see that, as I think all of us are, because that gives the people who are observing an opportunity to participate positively with the group. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you too, Jimmy. Okay?
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
Do you want to come up here or do you want to just stand there?
No, this is fine, but somebody, I have a bunch of papers in front of me, which I believe I'm supposed to hand out, so. these
I
are-
believe everybody has some of those
Oh,
in
they
their
do?
packet. Those were the
Oh, I have
extras.
maybe
I'm not
many
sure.
copies, and I don't know what.
No one brought those in before.
Okay.
Does everybody, we want to hand it, we can hold them up and let people read through.
Well, yeah, this one, and this one.
If there are extras, we might do.
Yeah, there's lots of extras. And they were referenced in the letter that we sent out ahead of time if they weren't. Well, they were actually too, but here's paper. So I want to just really quickly highlight what I wrote. I don't want to say that. And leave time for questions. So this topic started out to be enrollment forecast, but it really kind of turned into how to establish the size of the middle school, whatever middle school is opening. I had thought that you could just forecast enrollment, and then that tells you how big a school you're going to need ultimately, or at some time when the school is going to be at the end of its useful life, and you build this school with the forecast suggests that you should build, but it turns out it's really hard to forecast enrollment with any accuracy. There's a huge amount of uncertainty. And this one, which I think is the best I can do, and I'm not sure we can do any better by hiring an expert, not that I'm an expert, but I have done a lot of forecasting, but not demographic forecasting. But this chart seems to show that we will probably reach the 900 students that the school district had used as its size for the school. We'll reach it eventually, or maybe even exceed it, but we probably won't get above 800 for the foreseeable future, the next dozen years or so, and after that, it's really foreseeable. So that I would say it makes more sense to, well, because we're really covering another topic first. It's also customary to argue that you should build capacity ahead of need, because people say, well, it's going to cost more later. Well, yes and no. If there's inflation, which there hasn't been much of lately, but if there's inflation, of course, something is going to cost more next year than it costs this year. But on the other hand, $1 now isn't worth as much as $1 next year because you're going to earn interest on it in the meantime. So those two factors really basically cancel each other out, unless the inflation on construction costs is higher than the general inflation rate, which is what gets factored into the interest rate or such a thing. So I will, yes.
Just a little comment is, you wouldn't have the economy of scale when you are building a large project to add that space. So even though the cost per square footage may remain relatively flat over time, it's less expensive to build more at one time than to build two smaller.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily suggesting we build two smaller, but it is true that I did not mention economies of scale in this, so that is another consideration. I just wanted to kind of rebut the general feeling that it's always cheaper to go sooner rather than later. It isn't necessarily. And it also depends on people's time preference. That is, interest rates as low as they are, you'd think people would say, oh, you know, money next year is going to be worth more than money this year, so I might as well invest it in a school, right? But that doesn't seem to be what people are saying. People seem rather to be saying, I want to invest in anything but a lot of money to a government agency. So we don't really know what the interest rate is, but that people are using to view this decision, but it doesn't seem to me, it seems to me that it seems to be a fairly high interest rate. It seems to be the general sense is that we'd rather spend as little as we can now. So basically the whole thing is a judgment call, and we're going to have to weigh all these different factors about how good a forecast can we make, what is the benefit and cost of delay, and what are people willing to spend now versus later. It kind of seems like people want to spend later, but that's not a scientific observation. Am I seeing a yellow card for
I
me?
have two questions. Do the numbers include the homeschool middle schoolers?
No, they are enrollment in the Ellensburg School District.
Okay, and have you looked into any statistics or studies on what is the maximum size of the population of the middle school in order to get the maximum?
I have, you know where I put it. I didn't include it in this report, but I have really the fact that I've done some research on that question. I see what the numbers are. Here somewhere. Yeah, on the cost transparency committee, we looked at, I did some internet research on that, and it turns out that the ideal size for educational purposes is a little bit smaller than the ideal size for economies of scale, which Joanne brought up. But the ranges are broad and nebulous, and our middle school is basically fine. You wouldn't want it lots bigger than we're thinking about, but it's not a big middle school. It's not a huge middle school. It's on the upper end of what's good for both education and even economy of scale, but it's not way out there. And there's also debate, a lot of debate about the research that's behind the optimal school size. There are trends in the thinking in this, and there was a trend going on for a long time that small schools were better, and now even the people who said that, like Bill Gates, have repudiated it. So there's no real definitive answer. I can publicize, make public this email that I wrote with a whole bunch of citations in it, and we'll be happy in fact to post that. So anyway, my conclusion from looking at the enrollment data and I also threw some capacity data in there because the place where I was getting the enrollment data was the study and survey that was done for the district, and it also has capacity data, and it looks as though we have, the way they measure it, we have plenty of capacity, but I'm pretty sure our next two measures are going to say otherwise. And so enrollment is a fuzzy number, but so is capacity apparently. And one of the, I think, major solution to this quantity, which is, as I say, it's going to be a judgment call that we decide we should build for, is phasing, because you can get the economies of scale by designing a bigger building that you don't build it all at once, and maybe you don't end up needing it because, for instance, as you said, educational projects can change, and maybe we're using distance learning more and not people coming to school or whatever. So there's just a huge amount of uncertainty, and we have to use judgment. I'll take questions.
Any questions for Meg?
On the second page of your handout, the second paragraph, the last two sentences, you talk about below, my forecast is below these two until 2026 and 27, then higher if it's OSBI starting 15. Which of those, then you say that we won't exceed an enrollment of 800 students until that time. Which time?
2020, where is it at? 2020,
2026, 27?
yeah, not 2026, yeah, 26, 27.
Okay.
And the reason mine drives it later is because I'm relying on Office of Fiscal Management demographic projections, which go like this. And demographic projections are not included to long-term ones, are not included in the
Any other questions for Meg? A comment?
One of the things I think we need to really keep in mind is, after X number of years, we've been unable to pass a bond to build a middle school. And if we underbuild this with the hope that we're going to add on to it someday, what are the chances are that we won't pass that? And then are in a building that is too small for our needs. That is a concern.
Okay. We have a yellow card. Now, is this a clarifying question, Dorothy? Okay, and then Dick.
You were looking at some information that Jimmy had. You don't seem to have it, or we're not aware of which.
Jimmy, what document were you referencing?
Which document? It's, the Ellensburg Middle School enrollment forecast that makes it noticing around.
It comes in, but actually it's in the Ellensburg Middle School enrollment forecast by Meg Ludlow. It's a two-page report.
Middle of the second page.
Which you printed out, which is in our packet.
Second paragraph
No,
on the
it's
second page.
It's not my time.
It was not printed. It's on your email. It was emailed. Yeah, if you want another copy of that, you could talk to Meg or Nona.
Paul, Paul.
Oh, Paula. Paul, sorry. Let's see. Lauren, did you have a question? Okay. And I'll get your comment there. Paul.
This thing for Joanne. If you end up doing phasing approach, then when you do like the halls, the corridors, the cafeteria, the gym space, would you build that to the number that we're looking at, or would you build it to the number that we eventually would be at?
The second, the latter. When I'm looking at other prototypical middle school designs, when they phase, they're typically phasing additional classroom clusters or pods. And so they have the main shared spaces such as the cafetorium and the gymnasiums and such designed for the ultimate build-out number, because adding on to those larger spaces would be much more difficult in the future, I believe.
And Dick, you had a comment?
Well, I guess it seems to me, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm looking at Paul or whomever, is that one of the drivers is number of students, FTEs, students, and size and cost and the structure. But isn't the other driver in this, another factor for consideration is what would be legislative? And if I remember right, the legislature is talking about legislation to reduce class size, K-3, and even all the way around. And so I'm wondering, is even though you got 800 students, you built for those number 800 students at a certain class size, it's 29, and the legislature now says you got to fund and house 25 per classroom, and that makes a difference too. So it's just not strictly just not student FTEs, it's also what the class size and what's being required or what you're planning for. Is that true?
And that is true.
His speculation about whether it applies to middle school grades.
Okay, so he didn't ask the question, so you want to... Okay, Lauren has something she would like to say.
I don't know if this is the right card. Just that, I think that the legislature, that applies to lower grades, but not to middle school.
Okay. So there's a possibility that we're going to have to cut off the discussion because it's now 6 o'clock. If you have any further questions, please keep track of them, and they can be addressed at another time. So right now, thank you, Meg. Right now, Michelle and Mike are going to do a presentation on needs and best practices for middle school students. Part 1. Is that your clicker? That was fantastic. I don't know.
No, that was a clicker that Jimmy did pretty much.
Yeah.
Can you be our clicker?
Yeah. Just give me on.
All right, so we're sending around an outline of our PowerPoint, just so that you have that, you can jot down notes. There's a few extra for the audience. I didn't put that many, so there. You can have mine when I'm done with it. So, welcome to Morgan Middle School. Okay, so this is middle school. If you take a look at these two young men, this is about as typical as it gets. There's no Photoshop, no editing. They are that different. And in middle school, it wouldn't be all that uncommon for this young man to think that he might be a jockey, and for this young man to aspire to be an NBA star. It's middle school. That's what it's about. And they are as different as any of us in the room, and they change on a daily basis. So it's a wonderful, engaging place of learning for adolescents who are in the midst of enormous changes. And those are physical, emotional, intellectual, and social. And Audrey can answer some questions later, but, you know, and I think Mike can attest to this, and Allison, and, you know, if people say, what do you do for a living? And I say, I work at a middle school. They're pretty quick to ask if I need my head examined, because it's not that common that people are passionate about doing that. So who are our students? This last year we had 685 students enrolled at Morgan. 41% of those students were free and reduced lunch, which has gone up significantly. I just finished my 5th year, and when I started it was in the low 30s. 16% of our population is Hispanic, 13% qualify for special education services, and 6% are what's called transitional bilingual, which are students who are learning English as their second language. And there's an assessment that goes on that determines when they are no longer qualified in that category. One of the things I had sent out was a video called Middle School Moment, and it was about the importance of middle school in preventing high school dropouts. And one of the first questions I got back was, how do we translate that urban, I think it was a New York or New Jersey example, how does that translate to Ellensburg? And really, it is Ellensburg. The kids might not have the same skin color as the kids in the video, but they're all dealing with these same changes. 2 years ago, a little girl walks into my office. I didn't know her name, didn't know who she was, other than I recognized her as a student. And she starts divulging some family past. And that night, her father's removed from the home. Those are significant family stressors. We had students have to get restraining orders against another student for behaviors at school. Those are pretty big stressors. We've never, in my 5 years, had a year where a student hasn't lost a parent during the school year. I don't remember having friends that their parents passed away during middle school. But these are huge stressors. And so in the video, they reference poverty. 41% of our kids are living in poverty. And those are only the ones who actually apply for and get assistance. There's probably 10% more of our kids could qualify, they just don't apply for it. We might not have the gang problem as a draw, but we have a lot of other stressors that our kids are dealing with. And so the same concept applies in that the role we play as a middle school is doing something to make sure that those kids have a foundation and they have advocates and that they can stay in school and that they believe that. Okay. So who works with our kids? We have 2 administrators, 2 counselors, 4 custodians, 3 kitchen staff, a librarian, a nurse, 12 paraprofessionals, and 37 teachers. So it takes a village. Go ahead. So 13 of our teachers have worked only in the Ellensburg School District by choice. They want to be here. They got the opportunity and they're not leaving because they love it. And 6 of those people have been doing that for 15 or more years. 2 of our teachers actually attended Morgan as students. 2 months ago I could have said 3, but one of them just retired. You're doing the math. And 16 of our teachers currently have children in the Ellensburg School District. So it's something we believe in. We're vested in wanting to be there. So one of the things that Linda suggested was that we tie in some of the "this we believe" ideas, because taking a book and translating it to what does that actually mean in a school is maybe not as easy to do if you don't do it every day. So we'll start with "this we believe," that educators who value working with this age group and are prepared to do so is essential for a successful school. Every single middle school teacher has chosen to be at middle school. We don't have, I have no teachers right now who are saying, as soon as there's an opening at the high school, I'm probably going to go for it. It's not a stepping stone. That happens a lot in middle schools, but we're really fortunate right now that we have every single staff member choosing to be there. Effective middle level educators do make a conscious choice to work with young adolescents. You couldn't do this job if you didn't. Some of the things that we do to keep that fresh for us is we participate in book studies every year. We have usually 2 or 3 that go on throughout the school year. At least 1 focuses on being a middle level educator. We have several teachers who have gone back and gotten endorsements specifically to middle level education. We have had the opportunity to hire a couple of our new teachers who actually student taught at the mid-level because that's where they wanted to be. And then we have some teachers who work over at Central as well. So we really want to stay fresh with what is going on in middle level education. I'm not going to read all about Piaget to you, but one of the things that came up was, you can just go through all of them, there's 4. Oh, there you go. One of the things that came up was, what do they really need at this age? What is it about middle school? And at that point, when they are walking through our doors, is when Piaget would say that they are starting to make the transformation to the formal operational stage, which is to have the ability to have abstract thought. They're not there yet. They are coming through our doors in all sorts of phases and starting to learn to be an abstract thinker. So the challenge at middle school is also about having a diverse opportunity for them, because you have to be able to reach each one of those students in the classroom wherever they're at and bring them along. And that's really challenging to do when they're not all at concrete, or they're not, I mean, they are really all over the board. And it was interesting as I was doing research on all of this, which I haven't done since my undergrad years, but it was, you know, it's a reminder that there's adults who don't reach formal operational. And so, you know, this is a huge challenge to bring middle school kids along. All right, so here's where they are forming attitudes, and if you've had a middle schooler, you're probably familiar with that concept. Their values and their habits of mind. So we really take it seriously that this is way more than academics. So, oh, this is you, isn't it? Oh, no. Okay. So as a middle school, what are the things you have to do? Certainly, we have to promote interactions between the students and the staff, between the staff, including the families, and the community. It's not enough to just live in an isolated little bubble. And one of the things that's fabulous about Morgan Middle School is the community outreach that we do. We have had several leadership groups over the last several years who have done huge food drives. We had, help me out, Kicks for Cameroon. They collected shoes to send to Cameroon. They had, Allison did a drive to get school supplies to take to Nicaragua. Make-A-Wish Foundation, right. They wrote letters to Santa to raise money for the Make-A-Wish Foundation. So it's ongoing, and we really try to instill that sense that there's more to the world than just their phone. To provide an infrastructure which encourages students encourages student inquiry and builds a foundation for their future. They have to be able to ask questions. They have to. They have to be able to think beyond themselves and ask what if, or how does that work? And we have to provide an infrastructure that allows them to do that and helps them find the answers at the same time. And then providing an environment that inspires creativity. And do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I was speaking with a gentleman the other day who worked in an office building where I believe it was either Google or Yahoo shared the upper 2 floors of this building. And in this building, or in these offices, they had foosball tables and couches, and people didn't sit in desks and cubicles and those types of things. And the guy went up there, and he came from a more traditional business model, and he said to him, you know, why do you do things this way? And the company said, this is the way that we find that we get the most creativity out of our employees. When you put them in a box, they're not creative. But when you have flexible structures that they can relax to, structures that they can enjoy, that helps build creativity, and as a result, they have much, much greater productivity.
All right. And then just really quickly, there were some questions about how do these videos connect to this whole process. So I'm just going to share my thoughts, and then when we get to the question and answer or comments, people can share theirs. But really quickly, the Did You Know video, I felt at the very first meeting like I wanted everybody to get a chance to see this, because the key message in my mind is we are right now preparing students for jobs that don't even exist. And so to plan for what is now without looking to the future is a very dangerous thought pattern. And then the other one, man, the impact that we get to have to try and prevent dropouts later. High schools get dinged a lot for their dropout rate, and they get blamed for that. And doing all this research, it just hit home really hard again that I've got a role in that myself. Michelle Vivich needs to do something to prevent that. So I'm gonna let Mike take over.
So I think it's always important to talk about mission and vision statements, and this is Morgan Middle School's mission. And this is something that we didn't just sit down and write in 10 minutes. This is something we worked on over the years. 1993 was the first time we wrote the first version of this. And in the last couple of years, we've kind of been revising it a little bit, but really the key elements are still in it. Morgan's mission is to cultivate habits of excellence for a changing world by fostering inquiry, identity, and interaction in all students. And truly, everything we do at Morgan meets those 3 major criteria. So this we believe again. So high expectations for every member of the learning community. And this we believe said empowering students to learn, to become intellectually engaged, and to behave as responsible citizens. We have a number of programs in place. We're just starting a PBIS process. Michelle, you want to talk a little bit more about that real quick?
Sure. PBIS is Positive Behavior Intervention Systems. And the whole idea of PBIS is be proactive. You can't hold a student accountable for behavior they've never been taught. And this idea that, oh my goodness, they're in 6th grade, they should know this by now, is out the window. You can't assume anything, because even if they knew it, and they knew it in the context of their elementary school, everything's new. And so it's a really proactive approach to try to work with students to help them understand the roles that they have and the roles that we have in supporting them.
We also have a put 'em up program where, in essence, a student who's caught being good for some reason, they are written up on a nice little note that is sent home to their parents. They get some sort of reward, and they're certainly acknowledged in our building for doing good things. We have a Good Standing program, which is a great program. Students who have met our standards, academically and behaviorally, they get to do the fun stuff. They get to go to the dances, they get to go to the assemblies, they sometimes get some sort of a treat at lunchtime depending on what's going on. And so we really try to reward those students who are doing the right things for us. TPEP, the Teacher Principal Evaluation Program.
Sure.
Okay, never remember the last name.
Project.
This is a big deal that we've been involved in the last 2 years. The state changed, actually nationally pretty much, they have changed the model for the way teachers and principals are evaluated. And so as the new evaluation process really challenges us to take a look at our practices and work to improve them based upon our data that we collect, and really looking at that data, and also working with other teachers and working with our principal to come up with best practices for teaching. And professional development is another thing that our teachers do. We've talked about, Michelle talked about the book groups that we do. We also have Friday afternoons when we're meeting and learning different things. We have a variety of different speakers that come in. We're constantly working to improve. And then professional learning communities is really an amazing process that's been going on around the nation in the last 10 or so years. And that is an opportunity for like teachers, for instance, all your math teachers together or all your humanities teachers, to really work together to develop some common curriculum, some common assessments, to really check and make sure that your kids are getting a common education, whether they have me or they have Allison or they have anybody else. It doesn't matter who your child is assigned to, they're going to get some commonality throughout those different classes. And that's what professional learning communities have allowed us to do. Interesting here, it'll say this at the bottom, Robert Balfriends and Lisa Herzog from the Center for Social Organization of Schools at Johns Hopkins University, Philadelphia Education Fund, came up with these 6th grade indicators, which are truly staggering. They're the ABCs. A is attendance. 80 to 90% school attendance is an indicator of success in 6th grade. Behavior, an unsatisfied, let me rephrase that one. If they have less than 80 to 90% attendance, school attendance, that's an indicator of some problems in the future, which I'll share in just a minute. Unsatisfactory behavior mark in at least one class for their behavior, and a final grade of F in either math or English is an indicator that a student would have only a 10 or 20% chance of graduating from high school on time. Staggering numbers. In 6th grade, that's us. Very, very important time period in a kid's life. So another this we believe, assessment and evaluation programs that promote quality learning. So we really have done a good job the last 3 years of really studying the data of our students. And data is not just looking at test scores, it's looking at the broad child, the whole child. So we assess and evaluate programs, okay, sorry. We have an attendance review team that looks at students' attendance. If we see some anomalies, we have a kid who had perfect attendance and all of a sudden they're starting to miss days. We really look at that and see what's going on. Or if a student just has horrible attendance and has from day one, we need to take a look at that too. How can we help that student to be successful? As the previous slide indicated, poor attendance is an indicator that they're not going to graduate on time, if at all. We have a student success team that meets to discuss students that we just have general concerns about and to try and problem solve ways to help them out. We have our special services review team that reviews all of our students who are in the special services program or students who we believe might need to be referred for special services. We discuss our concerns and what needs they might have and how we meet them. We do 6th grade checks every 6 weeks. Michelle in the office checked our student grades for the whole building to take a look and see if there are any anomalies that we need to be looking at, and really target students who are failing to see how we might help them to improve. We also have scholastic reading and scholastic math inventory. We just started those in the last couple of years too. Those are great indicators on how students are going to do on the state testing and really help us to focus our instruction to help students in specific areas.
I just have to highlight something on this.
Yes.
On this, the SRI, the Scholastic Reading Inventory. We gave that for the first time this last fall, and we went through and we identified, we thought, wow, we have all these kids who are below standard, below the proficient level, but aren't being served anywhere else. They're not an ELL student, they're not in special services, they're not getting any other help. And then we gave them an additional test to just make sure that it wasn't just a fluke test, because like Tori and I were talking about earlier, a test is an indicator of one day, how they're doing that day, could have had, horrible morning. We started a class that was intentionally focused on 16 students who fell into that category, and the SRI generates what's called a Lexile score. It gives you a score at the end for where they're at, and that's measured to grade level, and typically about 75 points would indicate a grade level's growth. And in those 16 kids, 14 of them, because they were getting targeted instruction and targeted support, made growth of more than 200 Lexile points in a semester, because we had data to get us started and to guide our decision making.
And take that one step further, those Lexile scores have helped our librarian too. Because most juvenile literature is written with a Lexile score attached to it now. And so our librarian then can be looking at our students, where their Lexile scores are, can be helping to choose books that meet that child's reading level and help that child to grow a little bit. And at the same time, you can purchase books to meet the broad needs of our students. So that's kind of neat. Great job. Thank you. All right, so we have a number of specialized programs throughout our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Special education, which includes resource room, reading, math, and writing. Those are students who often we have classified as having a learning disability. We have specialized programs to really help them to improve their skills with the goal of mainstreaming them back into the regular program eventually. We have an amazing life skills and vocational training program, which I'm going to talk about in the next slide here in just a minute, so I'm going to skip that one for now. Highly Capable Quest program, that's what Allison teaches. What's interesting about this is that it's for humanities or all English, and it is, the state just changed the law. This is now required across all grade levels. And so the Highly Capable program is changing, and it's going to be including a lot more kids, and really it's going to be a benefit for those students as well. The English language learners, classes based on the need for English language support. If a student comes here and they speak a language other than English, which, as Michelle mentioned, is a significant portion of our population, our goal really is to help them to acquire the skills to be successful as an English-speaking student. We have math and reading enrichment and support, again, using the data that we talked about. We pull students who are deficient in a certain area to help them get very targeted instruction so that they can improve in their skills. So this Life Skills Vocational Program, I think Michelle said there's going to be 16 students in this program next year. That's a huge number. So, some things that they are responsible for include personal care and hygiene. They have 2 bathrooms with showers and personal care space and wheelchair access, and laundry facilities. They do 3 loads of laundry in that program a day. Non-ambulatory students, they have specialized beds, standers, swings, technology equipment, currently 20 by 10 feet space for 1 student. It's a huge amount of space is required. Vocational program, full kitchen, where they do baking and food prep and independent cooking skills. This is my favorite part, because every Thursday, if we're willing to purchase it, they create a great lunch for the staff that is wonderful. 1 week it's a salad of some sort, and the alternating week is a soup of some sort, all prepared by these students, and they do a great job and they're delicious. And it really helps these students to get some skills. Another neat thing that they do is they are in charge of our recycling program in the building. So they go around classroom to classroom and collect all the recycling, sort it, and those types of things. And they're just, it's just wonderful to see them learning some skills that they can translate out into the real world for their jobs. And then academic instruction, of course, they're learning academics as well, in addition to all these, but certainly at a different level than the rest. So again, we believe the middle school is the finding place. The entire curriculum at this level should be exploratory for young adolescents by nature or adventuresome, curious explorers. I truly believe that we believe and live into this statement. We do that by having a nice variety of elective offerings for the students. We have integrated curriculum projects. A number of our projects that we do are not just a math assignment or an English assignment. We oftentimes try very hard to combine a number of those. I teach a class called Explore Ellensburg. I teach about the past, present, and future of our beloved city. And many of my projects include a writing component. There's some math components in it because they have to do some actual design work, some architectural work with their project. And so they've got the math in there as well. They oftentimes have to present these to community groups and those types of things. So I try and just have a very broad, and most of our teachers do a number of integrated curriculum projects. Athletic opportunities. You know, I'm not a sports guy. I was not born with that athletic gene. My sister got all of those skills. But I have truly seen how athletics can help a student who is struggling in other areas to excel. It can be a huge motivator for them, and just for the health and fitness piece of it, athletics are a very, very important thing. And we know the research has shown us, and we just know this, that middle school kids moving is an important thing. Having them sit for any period of time just doesn't work. And then club opportunities. We have a number of clubs, and these vary from year to year. We've had a drama club, we've had creative writing clubs, we have the, what's the one who does? The La Chispa Club for our Hispanic students. We have a variety of opportunities for kids to do some really neat things. Science Club is a great one, very popular after school. The arts, again, hugely important for us as well. We really try really hard to integrate these. We have our art classes do a variety of media, everything from painting and drawing to clay to crafts and those types of things. We have band, we have 3 different levels of band plus jazz band, 2 different levels of choir. We have drama as an exploratory elective. Orchestra, we have 3 levels of that. We have wood shop and metal shop as exploratory electives as well. The arts are all encompassing.
I'm just going to jump in that one of the questions that we got was, will the performing arts curriculum be appropriately provided for? Was one of the number 1 question that somebody had. And if we have anything to say about it, absolutely. It's part of our core curriculum. We don't distinguish that our electives are somehow less than our other classes. That's just part of, not every kid chooses to participate in a performing arts, but if they choose to do so, that's a big part of their energy. So yes, we're hoping that that's the case.
And again, it's part of educating the whole student. I'm an English teacher, and yet I can guarantee you that my woodshop classes that I had in middle school, or junior high in my case, those are skills that I use more regularly than I use the skills I learned in my English class. I use my woodshop skills all the time. And I'm not a woodworker, but the things that I learned in there have translated to so many other parts of my life. Some more exploration. Career exploration. We've done career days, we've had career fairs where you've had folks come in and talk about different careers. 6th graders, why do they need to know about careers? Well, really, that's the age when they're starting to form their thoughts about what their future might look like. Really important thing for them to do. Computers. My Explore Ellensburg class that I talked about. Journalism. Our kids write an amazing newspaper once a month-ish. In addition to put together our yearbook, which is a fantastic production. Keyboarding classes, leadership class, publications, and Spanish. All elective classes that have just a broad variety of things for kids to know and to learn.
Okay. We're, of course, running short on time. I thanked Linda profusely for giving us 10 extra minutes, and now we're going to use them. So we're going to fly through some of these because a lot of it is, I put it intentionally on the slides so that you would have a copy of it. So this, we believe that curriculum is relevant, challenging, integrative, and exploratory. To highlight the next several slides, the reality is that our curriculum is changing right now. We are faced with the transition to the Common Core state standards and to the next generation science standards. A student teacher who was teaching our 8th grade math class last year, who fresh coming out, she's been trained under the Common Core, said that one of the things that was in an 8th grade class is now a 6th grade standard. So we are in the process right now of making that shift to continue making it relevant and challenging. So I'll let you read that on your handouts. I'll let you read about our health and fitness program, but that's part of this, we believe. This is just highlighting some aspects of the curriculum and some of the things that we're being asked to do. So I'll let you read those. Again, there's just so much. One of the things that has come up is the idea of 21st century skills. If you look up 21st century skills for middle school online, there's just a bajillion hits, of course. I found in our professional library this book that is written by, it's an anthology, it's a collection of different authors writing about 21st century skills. I'm not going to loan this up because I need to go back to it. But there's no end to the idea of integrating fully technology so that technology is not something separate. Technology is a part of the world. Now, and technology, it has always been. Technology was new at some point for everything. This pen was an advancement at some point. We are just at a point where the amount of technology available is so vast. So I found this site, and I won't go through all of these, but I listed 4 sample questions that they wanted 8th graders to be able to answer on this assessment. Which set of spreadsheet data can be used to make a chart that shows change over time? And then gave them different sets of data, and the students had to select which one would translate to a chart demonstrating change over time. And there's several like that. And one of the challenges that we face right now is that we don't have the technology to teach them this. So that is a huge gap. And our current facility, as it is, we can't add more to it. The technology is maxed out. So, and Jeff will be able to speak about that at some point, I'm very sure. Very quickly, I want to highlight, we have more than just academics. We have an incredible guidance and counseling program. And that focuses a lot on anti-bullying, peer and social pressures, drug and alcohol awareness. Mike mentioned career exploration. It's about supporting the student as a whole being so that they can learn. If they're distracted because their parents are getting a divorce or their grandfather's in the hospital, they need support so they can get back into the classroom and be able to learn. Oh, one of my favorite books, and I don't have a copy for all of you. Brain Rules by John Medina. UW, do you know him?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, UW brain researcher, but speaks and writes as if he's your best friend from down the street. And so he has, and this is one of our book group books this next year, that we know some things about the brain, and we have to translate that, which we know about the brain, into education for our students. And so that's on there, but if you get the opportunity to read Brain Rules, I highly recommend it. I'm really trying. Okay. Is you? Okay.
So, just very quickly, I've heard a number of people in the community say, you need to leave Morgan exactly where it is because that's where most people walk to. So we decided, let's check that out and see what the deal is. So we found out that 36% of our students ride the bus, 54.4% of students get a ride to school, 9.6% of our students walk or ride their bike. But that wasn't quite enough for me. So this last year I surveyed all of our students at Morgan at 6th, 7th, and at the 8th grade campus and asked them the following questions. If the campus of Morgan was where it currently is, would you walk or do you currently walk? And if the campus was near the high school, would you walk or do you currently walk? And the answers came out not hugely surprising to me because as I look around Morgan itself, there is not a lot of residential families who live around Morgan anymore. There are a lot of rental houses, a lot of college students. It's not the family neighborhoods that it used to be. We found out that 9.8% of students walk at the current 6-7 campus, 19.8% of students sometimes walk to the current 6-7 campus, so 13.4% of students walk or will walk at the current 8th grade campus, and 24.9% of students walk or will walk sometimes at the current 8th grade campus. So what we found is clearly more students actually will walk to school if the school is located near the high school than they currently do at our current location. Really important to us is an inviting and safe, supportive environment for our students. Again, right out of this, we believe. So every student, no matter what creed, color, or uniqueness, serves as a genuine part of the community and contributes based on individual strengths. We really highlight and work to develop student leadership. We have an ASB program that is second to none. When I go to ASB conferences with our ASB advisor, people are in awe of what our Morgan students do. I also teach a leadership class, which I think is pretty amazing for our kids. I've had kids come out of there and really go on to do some pretty amazing things. Student surveys, and then community service projects. A number, Michelle already highlighted those. We won't talk about those anymore. Physical space. All right, so a quick tour of the Morgan 6-7 campus. The discussion has been about what is the optimal size of a classroom. There's research to show lots of different things. So let me just show you what we currently have. Our portables, which were brought in 2012, and then we have another one in 2014, are 32 feet by 28 feet classrooms. So that's where I currently teach. Our 80s wing, which opened in 1994, the corridor width, including lockers, is 8.5 feet wide, and it dead ends. It is extremely crowded in that area during passing times. Extremely crowded. I will tell you, one of the things we frequently hear is you should build cheap. We built that wing cheap. That wing was built for $1 million. Well, as a result of that, we got significantly less of a building than what we really need. The room 81, our science lab, is 38 by 31 feet. Our science teachers tell us that is a very good size for a classroom. So they're quite pleased with that. And then room 83, which is one of our traditional classrooms in that wing, is 31 by 30. Also a pretty good size according to our teachers. The 90s wing, which opened in 1966, a very good year, because that was the year I was hatched. The corridor that is 11.5 feet wide in that wing. It also dead ends, but the extra width there makes all the difference in the world for students traveling down that path. It's a much safer thing. Kids aren't getting smacked in the face by lockers. They aren't running into each other. It's a much more walkable space for the students.
Unfortunately, with the split, we added a bank of lockers on the other
Yeah,
side,
so
so it's not quite as roomy as it once was.
And room 96, another traditional classroom there, is 31.5 feet by 31 feet. A very good sized classroom, allowing this to do, okay, thank you. The three-story building, I just want to highlight this. One of the things that many people talk about is why not just remodel a three-story building? Here is the exact reason why. It is 67 feet deep. So if we're doing classrooms of 31 feet by 31 feet, my math isn't great. And that's the exterior dimensions, by the way, so that doesn't take into account the size of the studs or anything. That makes for a hallway that's a couple feet wide. I don't think that's going to work for us. The current corridors on the second floor are 12 feet, and they do circulate. And the rooms in that building vary in size greatly. Most of the classrooms are about 31 by 21 to 23 and a half. Very, very small. I taught in one of those classrooms with 34 students, and it was crazy. And then my last classroom up there was 43 by 22. Great classroom, except for the 43 feet part of it. Because a student here, and my board is 43 feet down that way, they can't see the board. So I turn my classroom sideways, I lose everything on the periphery. Rectangular classrooms do not work for teaching.
Can I close it though? Okay. We're over time, but she's giving me permission to close it. So, Ed Specs, it's a great quote, read it at some point. These are the things that I want to say, not just have you read, because you need to hear my tone of voice. There are some considerations that we need to all talk about. Ed Specs team articulate the building needs and programs. There's an educational specifications process. They go through that, and then the design of a building should support and enhance programs rather than taking a building that exists and try to force programs into it. We're going to compromise the education of our kids if we don't look to the future and build for our needs. The next thing is, there's really not a magic number of students. This idea of what's the ideal, optimal size for a middle school, there's not a magic number. Every single year, we revise our program and review what we have. If there's a large class coming in, when this first grade class that's going to be there this year gets to middle school, I'm going to have huge revisions and staffing to do. I can talk about any of these other things at some other point if you have questions about them. And then some things that we hope you will consider. We're really proud of what we have. When we have a 6th through 8th grade program, we're really able to make a difference for kids. We know that. We believe it in the core of who we are. So this we believe. Dividing our campus into other grade level configurations shouldn't be a consideration. Our kids greatly benefit from the years of work developing a solid middle school 6th through 8th grade program. Every transition a student goes through has the potential to negatively impact their learning, their progress, and their development. And with this split, we threw this weird little transition in for middle school kids who already are dealing with so many changes. And a building that does not look valued sends a message to the kids that they aren't valued. We love what we do. We absolutely do. And we're happy to answer questions when we have time.
Thanks. Thanks, you too. So maybe there will be some more time later on.
There's some really great questions that I hope we can get to that people sent. We just didn't get there. I gave you some handouts. If we were to plan for 800 students, the number of classrooms that we would need is one handout. Another handout is, do they need to know what they're for?
Okay.
Don't they? Later. Okay, at some point I'll explain what your handout is.
Thank you. Sorry about that. We just need to move into, we now have 2 minutes. If anyone would like to ask questions of Audrey in terms of her experience of being a middle school student in the last 3 years, so she has experienced what in each year?
Should I shoot first? Okay. I don't really know what to talk about, but for the, I guess the differences between the 3 years, I would say the 6th grade year was the best because, for a lot of reasons, but mainly because we were together, and I agree that there's definitely a community that happens in those 3 years, 6th through 8th, and we're all going through a lot of the same changes, and it helps, especially the 6th graders, to have people to look up to in 8th grade, and in many other ways, I think we should try to keep it together. In 7th grade, it was not as good because it was crowded. You had to run from this corner of the world to that corner. outside, and that was not good. And 8th grade it was kind of hard because we were sort of in limbo. We weren't really in high school, we weren't really allowed to interact too much with high schoolers, but we weren't really part of middle school either. We got contact with those people maybe like 4 times, 5 times a year at assemblies, and it was very isolated, and I don't think that's good either. It's like a whole separate school for just the 8th graders.
And that was a nice article in the Daily Record. So do we have any questions for Audrey about her experience in the middle school? You don't have to, but have the opportunity. Yellow? So learning.
Right. Audrey, I'm going to put you on the spot. And I want you to know that I'm just looking for your opinion. I'm not looking for you to, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest priority, where do you feel your school district provides for you? Where do you feel your school district provides for the arts? On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being they provide the most for whatever it is, where would the arts fall on that spectrum, do you think?
Just on their own, I would say pretty high. It's 8 or so, especially when we had the performing arts facility. The electives are given a lot of importance, and in relation to other things, maybe a little lower. There's a lot of priority put on sports also, and other curriculum that takes precedence over it, like reading and math and stuff. But I mean, that is more important, I will admit. So I would say there's a good amount of precedence given to it, even through high school, what I've seen in high school.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Anybody else have a question?
Well, my question is, how important do you think the physical building was to your school experience in these 3 different years? As opposed to the
especially-
social environment, having the people come to and be nice.
Yeah.
And all that.
Especially in 7th grade, it was a big impact because we had a big, giant no-go zone in the middle, and they had to build a little, well, before they built the tunnel through, it was awkward because you had to run outside. That was hard, and also there wasn't that much space in the whole building. Like the hallways are pretty constricted. Yeah, and that was, I would say that affected it a lot, but I don't know.
So more so than either 6 or 8.
Yeah, in 8th grade it was pretty good because we had a lot of high school facilities, physicalized like the common area. So.
Any other questions for Audrey? And I'm sure, I'm pretty sure that she would be able to answer questions if you ask her later on. Okay, thank you. And so.
Good job.
Okay. So Molly, would you like to sit here?
Well, I've got some things to hand out, which I'll just sort of maybe do,
And if there are any extras at the end, if you could just pass them to the observers.
So, okay, looking at the time, I have 5 minutes, right? Yeah. Okay. So I am handing you this information about the Robert Walker plan. I wanted to tell you a little bit about Robert Walker, just so you know. He was the city manager of Ellensburg for many, many years, moved away, came back, was concerned about the non-passage of bonds, and when he got wind that the other one was, that another bond was going to occur, he got together with some other people and raised some money, like a lot of money, like $15,000, and asked an architectural firm named Facilitator, and Facilitator is a name that is familiar in our valley. They built a bunch of college campus buildings, and they also do renovations, and they did just renovate, or not just, they renovated Roosevelt High School, which was designed by the same architect that designed Morgan Middle School in 1929. And so they came and they prepared this report, and he was a true conservative in the sense of fiscally conservative and environmentally, and also just using things that we already have. And really, I think that I got to know him through this process. I did not know him before, but his heart was in the right place of just trying to find another option, another opportunity to get something done for the middle school. So that happened, and we all sort of know that was history. Well, Robert Walker, as a manager, as a city manager of the city of Ellensburg, the manager does the council's bidding. They count noses, they see if the bill will pass, and they march in that direction. So being a man who said, well, dust it off, we didn't win that one, he thought, what could we win? What could we pass in this community that would pass a bond and still remain fiscally conservative and environmentally conservative as well? So this is a plan that Robert Walker came up with, and honestly, I am not advocating it particularly myself, but what I would like is for everyone to collectively take a deep breath, try to not think about all the other history and things that have gone by. What this plan is a new idea, and that's what we need. When we get the Washington State survey back, that 55% of the people want a new school, but 43 want renovation of an old, we have a problem. And we have got to put on a totally new idea and think. And I'm not saying anything, I'm listening to your program and I really appreciate it. I know nothing about the educational merits of this. But I have done some politics before, and I do know that we have to do something really different this time. And whatever it is, it's got to meet the needs of the students, for sure, no question. But we've got to get a bond that passes. So the Robert Walker plan actually tries to incorporate a lot of the problems that are occurring in the district at this point, all the way down to the portables at the elementary schools, with the overcrowding there. That his idea was to renovate, do what you have, that Passetti report that you have was Passetti doing for the full-on middle school, quote, junior high, 6th to 8th grade. What he's proposing in this plan is to do it smaller and to only do it for 600 students and to include 5th and 6th grade in that. Therefore, moving 5th graders out of the elementary school, alleviating the need for the portables there, putting them in a modified middle school, and then constructing a new school on the property that the city had bought across the street, a smaller 600, and that would be called a junior high school. And thus being able to also expand either of those if you need it, because now you've got more than you need on the Morgan campus, and you've got the expandability and the use of the facilities at the high school for fields and things like that. So that is kind of the basis of it. It eliminates the need for a new elementary school. Some have said, oh, but now we're going to, it'll add another school, but we're going to have to add another school at some point anyway, if we're going to have to add another elementary school. So there is another school involved, but I know there's, it also keeps the Performing Arts Center. It also reduces the need for streets and utilities. I mean, I'm not going to read this to you, it's right in front of you. But for me, it's another idea. And it also is an elegant way. I think people are entrenched, and it allows for something to be done at Morgan, which a lot of people would like to see happen, and it would still be in the school district's hands. It allows for a new school, which a lot of people have felt that they want to have as well. And it allows us to move on, because I think one of the biggest problems that we have at this point is this entrenchment, and if we could come up with something that people would agree to, that would be good for the students, then we can, because we all know it's about a building, and it's not about what these people are doing so wonderfully in that building, which they are able to do, even that it's inadequate, when we all know that. So let's give them a place to do their teaching, and let's pass this and make our community be able to feel good about supporting education. And so if it's not this plan, and if it's not another, I mean, it's just, let's reach out and think of some different ways to go about this. And that's basically why I feel really strongly that we should consider all, and not just immediately figure out what's wrong with each plan. What's good about it, and what could we improve on?
Say, Robert would have done that if you were here. So Andrew Johnson, we now have 5 minutes. Would you like to come up here, Andrew? Okay.
I like to tell stories, so I'm going to tell you one. I started elementary school in the 3rd grade. There were 8 kids in the whole school. It was a one-room school. We brought water in a bucket. We stayed warm in the winter with a stove in the middle of the floor and wood. That's how we stayed warm. We lost the 2 kids. We were down to 6, and that's what we had until I graduated in 1942. Now, I did a little study on this whole thing of the kids that went through that school around the time that I did. It's interesting. I was in the flight test program for the NAV system of the 747. I also taught airline flight engineers how to fly Boeing airplanes. I know someone who has 2, not one, but 2 different, I forgot the word, but he graduated from courses in university. One was law, the other was engineering. He was working for a company building rocket motors at Aerojet General. I know of 2 girls, twins, that went through. They're retired teachers now. I can go on and on. One-room school. Why do you suppose one-room school produced so much success? The answer is when you crowd kids too much, they don't learn fast enough. They don't learn to learn. Now, I'm seriously concerned with the direction of our middle school is going with its population growth. It is apparently nearing an overcrowded situation as far as available classrooms are concerned, and getting to the point where students are not assimilating the material they're being taught. Now, I listened to Ms. Rivers here and her partner, and I'm beginning to wonder if we need to do anything with this middle school. They're doing great. Now, I'm sure that's not completely true, but you see where I'm going. It does not always come out right. study of the percent of senior high school students who have failed to qualify for graduation with a diploma because they have not been able to learn the material that was presented to them in earlier grade levels is a serious concern. Data obtained from Washington State Office of Public Instruction roughly 7 years ago, data of Ellensburg High School showed that roughly only 68% of the senior students earned their diplomas. Now, I'm told that's improved, isn't that correct?
I don't believe it was ever that low. It's about 85% graduating now.
That's not too bad, but it's not as good as it could be. I've seen better.
You have 1 minute, Mr. Johnson.
1 minute.
Yeah.
Okay.
Top this.
Now, I have another piece of paper here that tells about we need to split things up and build another school along with the one we have. Split our students up so that we're getting better coverage. I could go on about that, but I only have a few seconds here, so I'll leave it at that. If you have questions, I'll be happy to answer them privately or publicly as you please. Thank you very much for hearing what I had to say.
Thank you. Okay, so now we have 15 minutes for an open discussion of needs and best practices for middle school students. I believe that Michelle and Mike would also be willing to answer questions about their information as well. So there is a few, according to the recently adopted observer guidelines, we now have any observers who would like to make a comment have 1 minute apiece if they would like to. Is there anyone that would like to make a 1 minute comment regarding the needs and best practices of middle school students? You're always it's always possible to write your questions or your comments on a comment card as long as you leave your name on that. Okay. All right, so questions. Tor, I see your card.
Needs and, yeah. Somebody from the committee the other day mentioned something to me that had me a little concerned, and since I think this is the right place to mention it, because we're talking about curricular needs, what the needs are for the students going forward. And it says for middle school students, and I appreciate that. We are talking about building a middle school. But I just want to point one thing out, and that is that a number of years ago when we built a high school, there was no allowance for a performance arts space. There was no allowance for the curricular needs of our performing groups to have a correct space, much as a football team has a football field and basketball players have a basketball court. We don't just put a peach basket up inside the building. So when we built the high school, that didn't happen. Now, I wasn't here, but I was told that the rationalization at the time was, well, we have Morgan, we'll always have Morgan, you can use Morgan's, that meets our facilities. So, and I'm not like Scott, I'm not one of those people that's like, well, promises were made, but I just want to point out that when we talk about curricular needs in the arts, we talk about this building, we talk about the only building, middle school or high school, probably to be built in the next 25 to 30 years for Ellensburg School District, then we really have to talk about the curricular needs of 6th through 12th grade. We're not just addressing the curricular needs of 6th through 8th grade. Because the curricular needs of 6th through 12th grade are crucial in regards to the arts. And I think we have to keep that in mind when we think about this building. It can't just be, I saw a great middle school auditorium, it's perfect for 6th to 8th graders. Right, but does it meet the curricular needs of 8th, 9th, 10th, 9th, 10th, and 11th, 12th? So I just wanted to think.
Okay, Steve, is that a question for?
Yeah, is our current classroom size 28 students then? Is that what we're at?
Typically.
That's how I budget my staff.
26 to 30?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you have a question? Do you have a comment?
I have both.
Joanne?
One question was, from the program requirements of the middle school, I think it would be helpful to hand out to the group the list of spatial needs that you have for this middle school. I know that was included in the 4-page flyer during the last one, but I think that would, I don't know if that's been handed out to this group.
So what I gave you today is a document that says how many classes we would need for if we were to plan for 800 students. I did not include additional spaces like cafeterias, library. I didn't include those spaces. I think that the list is on that sheet that we got in our packets initially. What size those spaces are hasn't really been.
I didn't get that in my packet.
Oh, okay.
Because I put it all in my notebook and I didn't get that one. But I remember it was on the flyer for the last one.
Yeah, and
it's just like, for example, the number of gymnasiums was something in question last time, and I don't think that's addressed on your.
I think what I hope I put, but I'm not positive, is that for a health and fitness program at our level for 800 students, we would need 2 courts worth of gymnasium. That doesn't matter if it's all in one space that can be divided or 2 separate rooms. A fitness center and a traditional classroom that would be attached. And then, because those are all teaching spaces, and right now in our 1-court gym at any given time, there will be 120 kids taking physical education class during that time. So that was where we came up with it.
I think that's helpful information to have the sizes of those spaces too, which you have on the other document, so people can understand the net square footage needed for a facility this size versus gross square footage and that kind of thing too, because you're making recommendations. Okay, so my comment. This is a holdover from Meg's thing too. So we're going to be reaching that 800 in 2026. That is about 10 years after we build, if we passed and built the building, that's less than 10 years away to reach that maximum. I just want to point that out. We're trying to design a building that's going to last 50 years or more, hopefully 100 years like the existing Morgan, and we're already reaching that capacity in 10 years. It's taken us 10 years to even get to this point, and we haven't passed a bond yet. So that was a comment I wanted to make.
Thank you, Joanne. Now, did I see it? Yeah, Paul had a yellow and then.
I just want to ask about the tech spaces that you have. If you have like a computer writing lab, those types of things, and what do you foresee you might need in the future?
We currently have 2 pretty updated computer labs. One that's off the side of the library and one that's in a separate classroom. We do have another lab, but as I think Jeff was part of that conversation, that about half the computers are no longer working because they are, as a staff member as we get new computers, the best cast-offs go to that lab, and so it's dying very quickly. Our labs are used for both classroom teaching spaces and for open labs for classroom teachers to bring in classes if they need it. Going forward into the future, my feelings are that for a school of 800 students, you would want, ideally, we would want to go wireless and have computers on wheels, call them cows, because then you can have 4 or 5 sets of classroom computers that can be moved around. And Jeff can probably answer that way better as our technology coordinator, but I think that is a much more realistic look at what we're heading towards, rather than fixed computer labs that are just that, and it's space that could be used for other things. Okay, did you want to, and I see you, Dorothy, you have another yellow card as well. Did you have?
I mean, in addition to that, one of the things that's coming up is all our standardized testing will have to be done on computers. There's no more paper and pencil. That's, I believe, 2018 is that date. And so, having a computer on wheels, wireless, whether that's what we call one-to-one computing, where every kid has a computer, or a bring your own device, and we have wireless to support that. That infrastructure isn't going to go away. It's just going to be, we're going to need even more and more and more. So that's something that's really important to take into account with talking with our new tech director. He doesn't recommend putting anything new into Morgan because of the kind of how it's set up. Walls and brick walls and things like that are much too difficult. That's why kind of cast-off labs and things like that exist. So
You mean anything wired?
anything wired, but wireless doesn't go through the walls either. So you would have to double up on what you call your wireless access points.
So Lauren, you had a question?
Yeah, a question about clarification on, so you handed out this one, right, which is exemplary middle school from design share.
So that,
Go ahead, I was going to ask about this, and then I have one more.
okay, so that document, so the other two documents in addition to the 800 student numbers, the document that's the exemplary middle school was provided to us by Joanne. She did some research. And what that is a school did a
Post-occupancy evaluation.
post-occupancy, thank you. So after they had built the school, got in there, they went back and looked at the criteria for this, we believe, and aligned it to what their experiences were with the new school. So it's something that we can learn from, and how the impact of the physical space does change the learning environment. The other document that I gave you was a very, I thought, clever way to approach some of best practices for middle school. My favorite one on there is that the trips to the bathrooms, to the restrooms, reduced dramatically when they put a mirror in every middle school classroom, because then the kids could check their hair. And then that they found that was, the kids just needed to know they could see themselves. And so restroom breaks reduced because they had mirrors available.
So the question that I have, the question after this, thank you, is would you please, the request of asking, would you give us in writing the dimensions and the crucial requirements of whether it's what you feel you need? I think more tailored to exactly what your culture, your space is, your world is. But we would really need that in writing. It's one of the most important things for trying to evaluate a possible.
And I really do understand that's something. However, I'm really reluctant to put too much out there as far as need, because really an educational specifications team really needs to examine the programs that are there and the vision for where the school and the community wants the school to go, and establish that. And if I put something on paper right now that says this is what we need, then that is going to start forming people's opinions without going through the right process after the needs have been articulated. I can give you what we have, and I can tell you that the classrooms in the 80s wing are a great size. Well, there's two different ways to call our wings. There's one that was built in the 60s, but we call it the 90s wing because all the classrooms are numbered by the 90s. And then there's the classroom that was built in the 90s that all the classrooms are numbered in the 80s. So that's why I put on that form which year that wing opened. So
But the classrooms in the 1966 and the 1994 edition are approximately the same size.
Right.
About 31 by 31.
Okay, we have 2 more minutes here. We have a comment from Dorothy, a comment from Jimmy, but we have a question from Steve.
Actually, that might have been the wrong colored card because it's more of an answer. I just did a quick calculation of the classroom sizes on page 7 of the Welcome to Morgan Middle School presentation. And indeed, the size of the portables works out to about 32 square feet per student for a 28 student classroom. In the 80s wing, The sizes are 42 and 33 square feet per student. The 90s wing, 35 square feet per student. And most of the spaces in the original building, it looks like, are down around 25 square feet per student. So I think that gets a little bit of what you're talking about. I think, based on some of the things that happened with the previous bond, it might be best if we're the ones who decided what the sizes are based on, best practices, and judgments about cost and what's possible, rather than what would be ideal. Because if we go for what's ideal, we're setting ourselves up for a fall, setting
Okay.
ourselves up for disappointed people.
So that was an answer and a comment, right there. Okay, cool. So, just to point this out, that just, monitor yourself. Dorothy, you've been waiting?
I'll comment. It's my understanding there are over 500 homeschooled students in the Ellensburg School District. And some of those students access the regular classrooms for some classes, as I understand it, or for some activities. And has any planning for that been put into this? Because I don't see that there's any.
Have it been factored into the FTEs? Is that
If
where you're going?
we have students who enroll part-time with us, and they maybe go to an online school for part-time, or a lot of the kids who are not in traditional schools are not necessarily homeschooled, but they maybe take classes online at home. So we have students who come for partial days, and they are counted in our FTE. So if a student comes for 3 classes, we get 0.5 credit for that student. And we work in conjunction with the parent partnership. I am not aware of nearly that many, because if you drilled that down to the middle school, that would be a huge impact to our numbers if we had that many students being homeschooled, and I'm not aware of nearly that many. Our parent partnership program has 20 to 25 students, maybe.
Can you check into it?
Okay, I'm gonna stop this now. We're just a couple minutes over. I would propose, if people are interested, taking 10 minutes after our break, taking 10 minutes off of the setting the timeline, if people would like to continue this discussion. So that would give 10 minutes of continuing this discussion, 20 minutes for looking at the timeline and agendas.
I mean, continuing it now.
Continuing it either now or after the break. I just saw another card over here for Jimmy. Anybody interested in that?
I'd like to suggest that if we're going to continue it, we do it now, so it's still fresh in people's minds.
Okay, so we would continue it now. Could we have a call for consensus to add 10 minutes to this discussion, take it out of the discussion? Yeah. Okay. Take it out of the next item after the break, which has become the set the timeline and the agenda. Okay? If you're in favor, please raise a green card. If you're neutral, raise a blue. If you're against it, okay. Anything other than green and blue? Okay, we're good. So we'll continue this until 20 minutes after 7. Jimmy, I believe, or did you need to answer the question more?
I don't think so. I think Paul probably has more information than I do beyond what I just shared.
Okay. Okay, then Jimmy will get you. Oh, you have a comment. Okay, Jimmy first, your comment.
I have 2 quick comments.
Okay.
One, when I was looking on the web, looking for the impacts of school buildings on student learning and so forth, I ran across a tremendous site, an endless thing. Jeff, do you have that? There it is, right there.
It's great.
That is a great citation. It doesn't go into a lot of information about space and everything, but it mentions the kind of things that Michelle and Mike were talking about, plus a whole lot of other things. Thanks, Jeff, very much for that. The other comment I have is about something on Meg's first page of Meg's presentation earlier. The comment revolves around the star at the bottom of the first page. And it's a reaction to OSPI's short-term forecast about enrollments. And the quote is, "the basis for which we, and even they, don't know." So what that's telling me, if I understand that correctly, is that it's very difficult to put a great deal of faith in the OSPI projections for enrollments. If they don't know how they got it,
They have a black box that was built years ago, and they don't even know what's in it. I found that out in research. But it's surprising that forecasts are as good as they are. Apparently, they are quite good.
Okay.
thank you.
I'll email our homeschool students for that.
Okay. Okay.
I'll send out how many, I'll email everyone the number of homeschool students that are in our district. People know that.
Thanks, Paul. Allison, you had a question?
Of course, for Jimmy, since I do want to look at that NCEF website, but in a nutshell, could you answer, do they think that the school facility does have an impact?
Yes.
on learning? Okay.
Including the colors of paint.
Really?
And the light. And all kinds of other things. Yes.
Okay, does anybody else have any comments? It sounds like this is a good resource that Jeff will be sending out the link to. Any other comments or questions about this topic? Okay, well, how about we just take our break sooner rather than later and just add this time onto the timeline. So it is now 17 minutes after 7. We will reconvene at 7:27. Everybody knows more, either a little or a lot more than they did before. And it's time for the team to start setting more of the agendas. At this point, I have been setting them in conjunction with whoever else will talk to me. And we're just getting fewer and fewer, so the group has gotten right? So in terms of getting a timeline, what did I do there? Start thinking about it. Okay, we have 180 minutes. And for each meeting, 10 minutes has to be in the break. So, Dick.
I just got one comment, and I just got to follow up with Bruce's email about extending the timeline, the date to produce a report to the board. And I was thinking about that is maybe we can buy some time and at least buy some time and some expertise that we haven't had no control of. And what I'm referring to is the time we spend and how often we meet as a committee, we have control over that, and we decide that. One that we don't have control of is the architects. And when we get down to the brass tacks, the hard costs, soft costs, as it relates to various options. And what I'm getting to, or alluding to, is there's two requests, or two considerations for this committee. One is to allow Paul to contact the NAC, the artificial NAC, and see how long it takes them to put together cost estimates, soft and hard, as it relates to about 8 options. And the 8 options that I would offer, that I think the core and the structural is they have either buildings that's new, remodel, or a combination thereof. The location, it's either Morgan or Valley View or someplace else. And given that, I see there's 8 options, and one is new at Morgan, new at Valley View, remodel Morgan, combination of Morgan, or new prototype, genie thing, someplace else in some location yet to be determined. The other 3 are as it relates to Morgan site, as a community center, new, remodel, and combination. And to me, this is just the main structural parts of the options I think this committee needs to consider and you can massage the various variables, but what I'm concerned about is how long is it going to take the architects to put this together? And I think it's going to have a bearing on our timeline. If we contact now and say, if these are 8 potential options, how long is it going to take you to produce some cost estimates related to the hard and soft costs? And if it takes a month, I think that has a great bearing on for us as to when we start taking a look at options and start the decision-making and discussion. If it's 2 weeks, then I guess it's not a big deal. But I suspect it's going to take them a while, and I think we need to know that as a committee so we can plan our timeline down the road. And I don't think that August 6th, we're going to be able to have, if it's really be meaningful for the architects to come and we job on potentials and say, what, maybe this so, if the committee decides that, but I think it's important for us to get a handle on the timeline that, for an area that we have no control of, get a hold of NAC and say, how long is it going to take, if these are the potential 8 options. And then if, I'd like to say, start working on those, and then we can be in contact with NAC between now and then, and massaging the variables. That's my.
Okay, so Lauren, you had a comment, and then Joanne and Cor. And Paul, is that yours? Or you just plan? Okay.
Yeah, well, I like the idea of getting the architect's input on options. My concern would be that the information that they come up with would only be good as more refined requests from them about what we would be asking for, and because only then would they be able to really give something significant about costs, it seems to me. Maybe, I'd like to hear what Joanne thinks about that.
Well, that's what I was going to talk about. I agree with what Lauren's saying. I mean, Dick and I were talking about this before the meeting started, and I wonder about them spending a lot of time on some of these options if we talk about the needs for our middle school. Maybe some of those would be weeded out. Or, I'm confused about the community center thing. Are we talking about having a bond that includes the community center as well as a middle school? I mean, so I'm a little confused about that. But I think the architects need to. I don't think they've really had enough time to hear about our programmatic needs for this particular school district and come up with recommendations. And I know people have questions about what's an efficient way to design a building. Is it a square? Is it clusters? Is it a double-loaded corridor? There's general architectural design questions that I think they could talk about. And then I was also wondering, and I talked to you about this week, is whether or not they are coming next week, and they weren't on the agenda, and I thought we were going to be talking about architectural issues, and so, sorry, I hope I didn't muddy the water there.
Okay, so we have a green card. Are you answering a question, Lauren?
I was wanting a little moment to respond for clarification to Joanne.
To a question?
Can I do that right now?
If you have a question for her.
Oh, my question for, would you, that's in my notes, frame that and try to come back later. Other
Okay,
people want to talk right now.
Maybe a comment, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's
did
about
you
the
have
next
a?
agenda?
My only comment, this is why I brought up for discussion, but my only comment relates to the community center is there is an interlocal agreement. We have a city that they're taking care of Morgan, the older structure, the main portion, as a community center, so that's going to weigh in on our decision too, down the road. There, as I understand, the last email we got from the city was that they should have their report by NAC on that as it relates to cost in August. So that's one more thing this committee is gonna be confronted with, is that no matter what that we talk about facilities, this is another option that's gonna be presented that we're gonna have to discuss. And it's gonna be part of our bond, probably not, they have to take care of it.
But they're already estimating those then, right?
They're for the city,
For the city.
for the city.
Okay, so Dorothy, you had a question?
Yes, has it ever been discussed that we were supposed to, if we didn't remodel the old Morgan, that we put into our plans what's gonna happen to the old Morgan if there's another school built, which is used instead of the old Morgan?
Do we have
So
anybody
why is
with an
this
answer to that?
discussion? Excuse me. Why is this discussion? That's asked for clarification. Did we ever consider we were going to include that in our discussions?
Okay, does anybody have an answer to that? Lauren and then Joanne?
I hope that if we came up with a framework that had these possible models or solutions or scenarios, I'm just gonna call them scenarios, that's what I was proposing to do next week, so that that could be one of them, and then we would say, okay, program is really important, educational needs are, but we know that we have to take into consideration more variables than that. So if we set, let's say, someone just said 8 options, that was good. Yeah, if it turns out, whatever number it turns out to be that we decide on, then within those, we could systematically look at the safety issues, the technology issue, and then that could become a record for our final conclusions. I'm afraid we just want to have something to come back to that says, oh yeah, we considered technology, we considered what happens to the Morgan building if this scenario is done, etc.
Okay, that was one answer. Joanne?
And I think that's a good start. I wonder about the bond or the financing discussion being the meeting after the 20th, when that has a lot of bearing on what Dorothy was asking about, because state match and what you can and can't do with the existing Morgan is a really important factor. I mean, it's a $10 million question or more. And it was something I wasn't clear about when I started on this process 2 years ago. And it's a huge elephant in the living room about, can you get state match? And so I don't know if someone can at least bring a little bit of clarification on that subject when we're doing the framework thing that Lauren was talking about.
Okay, pretty soon we're gonna have to, start looking at dates and saying what's happening when. Tor, I've got you on the list. Paul, did you have a clarification, did you have an answer to somebody's question?
Might be blue.
Okay, if it's blue, then,
Blue, right?
okay, blue and a green. Can we take Tor first then for blue and a green? Okay, Tor.
Well, I just want to voice a concern that I'm feeling, which is that we're moving ahead with a group assumption, and it has me a little concerned. And that assumption goes back to something Molly said a little bit earlier, which is that something drastically different needs to be come up with than the bond that just recently failed. The bond failed by 8 votes, very low voter turnout. And according to the CTC, am I saying that right, the CTC? There was a lot, the community felt like there was a lot of communication that could have been better. A lot of communication could have gone out to the community, questions that we know now that maybe we didn't know when that bond was run. So I'm asking, I guess, as a question too, are we moving ahead with the assumption that something drastically different has to be done? Because a lot of work went into the last bond. It failed by 8 votes. And it was a very low voter turnout, so I'm not sure that that's not still on the table, just revisiting that.
Paul?
But a different bond every time, very different, dramatically. And if it is, then, and if I'm the only one, then I need to know that too.
Well, question, comment? So that would be one scenario. And we can ask the architects how long it would take for them and what information would they need. I know they would need a program, you know, number of classes, special ed, physical ed, that sort of thing. And what kind of, perhaps this committee would want them to do. I mean, one of them is, you know, the Walker Committee. Could they pencil it out and see how much it would cost and how long it would take to do that? Build new versus complete remodel. Some of those things we know are gonna be asked by this committee to take a look at. So there's some of those items that the architects certainly start to work on. It wouldn't be all of scenarios, but I do believe that we can start the process, but I think we need to get them here and have them answer questions that this committee might have to further develop some of the other scenarios that might, like Molly said, that we need to think outside the box that might occur. But we know build new and remodel is an option. They can probably start penciling that together.
Could they also maybe look at, oh, sorry, no problem. Sorry.
But I think then they should also be here to answer any other questions that people might have.
Okay. And Michelle?
Well, maybe they can also look at what it would be for a combination, you know, of remodel and because.
There never was a strict, well, there wasn't.
Yeah, so anyways, I'm just adding a possible scenario, because you mentioned full remodel, full build new, maybe there's a combination they could look at.
I just want to bring that up to start, obviously, the discussion, which is good, but the second thing is the timeline. That's why, because if it's going to take a month, they need, you know, follow what Paul was saying, they need to start now, so we can remain in our timeline, you know, and that means having them come next week, 2 weeks, to get the clarification and to let us know where we're at, great. But we'll be looking, you know, for a product that this committee to really start chewing on, evolving. We need to start that now if it's going to take a month.
You like that?
We're next month.
I'm not sure. So that way, if someone does have some, you know, utopia plan at the very end, we already have these others to go to take a look at. Because I don't want to not consider somebody coming in with a plan at the very end and trying to complete the winner.
Okay, so do I understand that there's a motion, basically, a question to be answered about, does the team want to have Paul contact NAC for how long it will take them to create cost estimates for the 8 options that, or whatever? Okay, so we've got, okay, these are all answers to my question. Tor, yes, you have a red card?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would just ask, I'm absolutely for it, but I just want to ask if what I said before, we don't have to talk about what I want to talk about, but I don't get any sense from anybody if I'm the only one. Am I the only one that feels that way?
Is Tor the only one that feels that perhaps the last bond was an option? Is Tor the only one? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
I'm with you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
Okay, you're not the only one.
I'm just asking
Yeah,
the committee, because if I'm barking up the wrong tree, then I'll move
You're
on
not.
with everybody else.
You're not.
Okay, then I take away my red card and I'm fine to ask the architects. As long as the one that was already submitted is still on the table, then I absolutely.
That's never been taken off.
Yeah, there shouldn't be.
Okay,
Great,
so
great.
Dick,
I
it sounds
misunderstood.
like, I'm not
Fine.
sure everybody knows exactly what those 8 options are. Could you write that out and,
Well, I would suggest 2 things. If we allow, say, Paul to go ahead and contact, these are the 8 options, and then we just follow with emails periodically as to, and massage that between now and when they get here. And then, in other words, keep that line parallel with what we're doing and make sure that we have a timely response by the architects.
Okay, now
And
remember
that,
that
in
we...
your concern, that's certainly an option.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, I just was confused.
Okay, so just remember that there's no discussion by email, but you can discuss this amongst yourselves. It happens, you know, it's good. It's good to do that. So just to remind you, but yeah, if you will send out those options, Dick, tomorrow to people. Okay, so we have a question on the table. I'm getting, let's see, just stop. Okay, Mike. Mike and then Joanne and Dorothy. Okay, did you have one, Marlene? No. Okay. And Dorothy, and do you have a question? The red is the process question. Is there a problem with the process?
I don't really understand it. Did we have a request for consensus regarding anything?
The request for consensus that I understood was that we were asking the team to have Paul contact NAC for how long it will take them to create cost estimates for the eight options that Dick was talking about. Was
I
that?
don't think that
We have not had a call.
call.
We have not had a call. I mean, we've not called the consensus. A motion is on the table, discussion about that.
That's what's going on.
That's what's going on right now, yeah. Okay, so, Mike.
I just wanted to be very clear that I 100% support Tor's comment and 100% agree with him, in case you were feeling not supported. That has exactly been my feeling since day one. Thank you for saying that.
Okay, Joanne?
I really question whether we need these last three that include the community center if they're already working on that for the city. And that information can be shared with us. But I do think we should include someone like the Walker plan on this. But I would like to make sure that they include operational costs. You know, Walker plan or any plan that's talking about 2 middle schools, you're talking about not manning one middle school, you're talking about running 2 middle schools with 2 different administrations and such, and the, you know, that ongoing operational cost.
Okay.
Will the architects have that cost? They'll have to work with the school district to come up with that cost.
Okay, Tori, you had a question of clarification?
Just for Joanne, but wouldn't the numbers the city's looking for be significantly different because their use is going to be different than the school's use? Am I missing? You know, in other words, you're saying the city's already doing that, but wouldn't their numbers be different because the usage is different?
Well, then I'm not sure I'm understanding what Dick is talking about with these community center options. I thought it was, how much does it cost to reuse Old Morgan as a community center? And isn't that what they're doing?
Okay, all right.
But
I did not understand that to be what he said.
Exactly, what my point was being is that part of the community, they're gonna say, okay, that's what it's gonna cost me in tax dollars to run a bond, you know, for middle school. This is what the
Dick?
city's gonna do.
I'm going to stop you here. I want to just do a review of the 2 colors of cards that are the yellow and the blue. If you have a short question of clarification, please raise a yellow. If you have a comment, whether or not there's a question in there that you have a question about, that would be a blue. It just makes the process work. So Marlene, you had a question, and so Dick, do you have another comment?
Well, I was going to try to answer.
And that's my question, is thank you for doing that. I did not have a clue what we were talking about, the community center. It was just kind of scattered in here, so I think I have it.
Okay, and Lauren, did you still have a question of clarification?
No, I think it's more a comment, but it can wait later on in the process.
Okay, comment. Dorothy, you had a question of clarification.
2 of them. Are we restricting our options to just what you mentioned?
Okay, do we have an answer for Dorothy's question? That would be a green card. You got that blue-green thing going on. Okay, I saw Dick's question, Dick's answer, Paul, and Meg.
The short answer to your question is no. to me, this is just the core options, and then what evolves out of that in our discussion, that will be as time goes on. But it seems to me, and probably with the community center, make sure, or at least the way I understood it, my own comment is that if the community center, when we go to the community as it relates to the bond measure, and if the city did indeed take that Old Morgan, because the question is, what are you going to do with the Old Morgan site? That was always brought up in the past bonds. Well, this is one reason why the city came to the school district. What's it going to cost for middle school? What's it going to cost for a community center? Because it seems to me, when you go to the election, that's going to, for the voting public, that's going to be a big factor. And so it seems to me, and then if they decide not to go to the community center, then it raises the question, at least in my mind, for this committee is, now what are you going to do with school district with the Morgan, Old Morgan piece? And so to me, it's a player, it's that elephant in the classroom, it's the elephant in the classroom that we need to deal with, but, take that into consideration, but that's going to evolve as we go on, that's all.
Okay, and we have another answer to your first question. Okay, did you?
My answer would be, I certainly hope not. And furthermore, not those 8 options. And furthermore, I don't even think we should do all of the theoretical 8 options. We should lay out what they are, but some of them are going to be non-starters to begin with, maybe. So I think we really need to be working toward what are the real options we want to look at, not what are the theoretical 8 from, the picnic. Maybe they're the same thing, but not necessarily efficiently much in creative thinking.
Okay, Paul, did you have any more answer to that? You had a green, you're good. Okay, you had another question, Dorothy?
Another question. Why isn't the entity that, if the Morgan Middle School isn't used for Morgan Middle School, why isn't the entity taking over it, paying for the building and the property? Is it just being turned over to the school district, or, excuse me, to the city, or whoever?
Okay, and I just want to clarify here that we have on the table a motion to have Paul contact NAC for how long it will take them to create a cost estimate for X number of options. Steve, you had a question of clarification.
So continuing with Meg's thinking about why don't we focus on things that are least vaguely possible? It seems, and I'll try to phrase this as a question, doesn't it seem that knocking down all of the existing buildings at the Morgan site and building new there is very unlikely to happen?
Okay, we have an opportunity for answering that question, but I need to say that we are now 2 minutes over this time. And we are now into the call for the time that we had set aside to schedule additional meetings. I would propose that I ask any of the observers, do you intend to ask any questions during the 8 o'clock period of time? Okay, Pat, you would? Okay, so that's a 2-minute time frame. Anybody else? Okay. So that helps us know how much. So we had 10 minutes assigned to an observer comment period. We could go over into that then. Anybody have a problem with going over into the observer comment period for 5 minutes so that we start the observer comment period at 8:05 rather than 8 o'clock? Anybody have any problem with that? I mean, call for consensus. Is that okay? Okay. Okay, so we'll just do this. Okay, and Pat, I've got you down for that. Okay, so now there was a question on the table from Steve about something about the likelihood of taking all the buildings down on the current site. Does anybody have an answer for that? That would be a green.
He's got a green.
He's got a green, okay. Let everybody agree him. And
What I was saying to Steve, if we knock down every building at Morgan and built new, well, that would be determining the cost of building new, whether it was at Morgan or it was next to the high school, or if it was at some other location. What we're doing is we're determining those costs. And those cost estimators for the architectural firm, they can generate those costs.
Except you have to add them.
Okay, please raise your card. Yeah.
1.1.
Okay, so, Mike, you had, you have another, you have an answer to your own question, Steve?
I
You are
just grabbed the
good.
first card I could reach. Meg's right. So I
Is this a
made
comment, Steve?
Dick, I'm in trying to understand the options that you laid out. I drew a matrix of 3 different sites: Morgan site, high school area, new site of some sort. And then on the rows, options: build new, remodel, a combination, which I would call the Walker plan, and then I added a 4th line, rerunning the previous bond. When
That's
you,
new. That's new.
that's new. Yeah, that is new.
It's new.
Oh, that's new. That's new at the high school. Anyway, I'm trying, you listed the different options.
Prototype on, new prototype.
New prototype.
New prototype was another option.
Scott Rollins.
You know what, I actually haven't understood what was going on for about the last 15 minutes, so you guys just go ahead and do it.
Okay, Jeff is going to find out what the 8 options are from Dick and enter it into the computer and put it up on the top so that everybody knows what 8 options Dick is talking about. Mike, you had a comment?
Just a brief one. I would like us not to completely take off the table the idea of bulldozing Morgan and building on site. That for me is not my favorite option, but it would be a compromise I might be willing to consider if the right scenario came forward. So I mean, that's a scenario I think we should
Could you repeat
consider.
that? Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Sorry, Joanne. I was just saying that Steve had suggested taking off the table the idea of bulldozing all the existing buildings and building new on the current site. I would like to at least keep that on for comparison purposes. It's not my favorite idea, but I would like to at least look at that as a comparison.
Okay, thank you. And did you still have a comment? Okay, hold that thought. Is this a question of clarification? Make sure.
It's so much pressure.
I know it's a question. Is it short and is it?
It is short, it is a question, yes.
Okay, cool. Can somebody
And
answer?
it's for Paul or Meg or Dick, and as school board members and the superintendent. When we compare these different options, is building new off the Morgan site, and we look at that price, and we look at remodeling Morgan, do you as a school board and or as the superintendent view the liability of Morgan, a building that we might have to tear down for $10 million, as an additional cost to be added to the building new price? Or is it something we may sell it, we may keep it, we may demolish it? It's not to be considered when we consider building new versus remodeling work. It seems like it's another line of question to me.
Okay. So Paul, Dick, or Meg, do you have an answer to that question? Or Joanne, or whoever might have an answer.
Sorry, Joe.
I have an answer. I don't know if it's the same as the other 2 guys' answers.
I was going to say that was a huge problem with the last bond, that we left it open. And that didn't fly with a lot of people. So I think it would be good to come up with a direction.
Okay, thank you, Joanne. Paul and then Dick with green cards? Or whichever.
My hope is that when we go out for a bond, if it's not on site, we'll be able to tell the community exactly what's going to be happening and for how much it's going to cost. But I think it was a concern in the last one.
Okay. Tor, did you hear the answer to your question?
I apologize, I will check with Paul, someone was asking me a question.
Okay, Dick.
That's exactly, because that was one of the issues, because the answer was, the board at that time said, well, we'll put together a community group to figure out what we're going to do with the structure, and that didn't fly. You know, and it's kind of two-edged sword, you know, you say what you're going to do, why don't I going to vote no, or say, well, we'll leave it open, we didn't like that either. So, you know, you just say, damn, if you do that, if you don't, so it's better just to try to answer the question, be it right up front, and go from there.
Okay, so Marlene, you had a comment.
I just wanted to reiterate what Joanne said earlier. If we're getting costs, we need to know all of the costs, such as the Walker plan or schools and everything. We need to compare apples to apples.
Okay.
We're not doing it all.
Okay, so these are the 8 options that are recommended by Dick. why don't we just take a moment and look at them?
You see them?
Okay, so you wanted to have the Walker plan on there as well?
I think that's what they said one of those really was, wasn't it? Didn't I hear that?
The new prototypical?
No,
that's not.
G.
There wasn't one?
It's
Well, it should be on there.
So it should be.
It should be listed.
If it's, is it, Dick, is that included in any of those?
The Walker plan per se, having another building and a new site, well, sort of, but I'd say sort of, it's not really. The new prototype, well, that's the Rollins plan, okay,
Okay.
that's what that means.
I think there was that was in there.
3 and 4 are pretty much the same. You're not gonna be able to remodel Morgan without building new and remodeling. So 4, combination at Morgan site, I think is the same as 3. It's not just a remodel.
Yeah.
Right, Molly? I mean, even the mom's study wasn't just a remodel, it was an addition and a remodel. Right? So I think 3 and 4 are repetitive.
I just brought that.
Okay, we have a blue card, well, sorry, I called it blue card before I saw your yellow. Lauren, go ahead.
I think that when Nat came here, they already gave the 3 scenarios. They gave 3 scenarios and talked about the cost. And my main concern is that I don't think that I want to have an architect come up with the costs about these scenarios without us having more discussion, so that we have a common understanding of what we want the cost to be, because it could end up taking a lot of our time and not be good enough. And I have a major concern about that. I also have a really concern about the timing with respect to the idea of what the city, I think, unless I misunderstood what Dick was saying, that we need to get this started right away, because the city is already working on what they would do with what their plans would be about using Morgan for a community center. And I have a major concern about feeling that this group is pushed forward by anything happening at the city.
And Meg, you have a yellow, and then Tor, you have a yellow, and I saw blue somewhere in the corners here. Just a second, Michelle and Molly. And I want to let you know there are 3 minutes until we have an observer comment, and we will need to look at the agenda again because we're all wonky with the agenda. Okay, Meg.
I don't understand what 7 and 8 are, either one of them. Because the only thing I understand is the community center goes with the new. It becomes the use of the old if we build new somewhere else.
Right, you know, this is not changing pipes, so you gotta consider that the heat stroke. Is that, you know, again, the city would look at the old 29 structure, community center, and then what do you do with the 60s and 90s edition? Do you level it? Do you remodel it? Or do you do something different? That's why, that's all that was meant to be. Because the community center, according to the city, they should be able to get their data, their cost estimate by the end of August. So it takes a month for them, Matt, to put together some cost considerations for these options. It's all timely. And so we could have, by the end of August, we could have at least some options, some costs, and then this committee needs to review those and start adding, subtracting, and massaging the factors of the.
So you're talking about we'd be sharing the site?
That's one consideration.
Is that a legality? I mean, can we do that?
Okay, that would be a question. Joanne, did you have a question?
Can we do that? No.
Okay, I have calling it. Okay, everybody stop for a minute, just take a breath. Okay, so what I have is Tor, Michelle, and Molly. Do you all have blue cards? And
I have a yellow card.
oh, you had a yellow card. Okay, so so I just want to capture all these because we're going to do a hold. So Tor, you had a yellow. Am I seeing a yellow? You have a question of clarification, Jimmy? And Michelle, you have a, never mind, she says. Molly has a blue, and Steve has a blue comment. Okay, anybody else? Did I miss any other cards? Okay, hold those thoughts. Pat Kelleher, I believe you have a comment. As an observer, you have two minutes at this point.
Okay, I think there were at least two unanswered questions in the last bond. One was the extension of 3rd Street, and the other was the future use of Morgan. The extension of 3rd Street, I think, is resolved. The city can come, and that can no longer be a question to the voters. What's going to happen with Morgan, although the school board was going, hey, we're going to form a committee after this passes, what to do with Morgan was already decided. You cannot use Morgan in that scenario in a bond passing in any educational use. In the public as a whole, I had no understanding. So I'm going to form a committee, and when you walk in the door, you can't use it for educational spaces. Well, nobody told me that when I voted for the bond, okay? And I just want to make sure that that's a common understanding. That's an OSPI rule. It doesn't make sense. There's good parts to it. If you take matching funds, you got to take the facility out of service. For how long? According to OSPI, forever. Okay? So you can get clarification from OSPI, but that was the second question that I think the public, hey, what are you going to do with Morgan? Is it going to be Washington? And you could have bought Washington for $1 for years because it just sat there. Okay, they tried to sell it. Well, that's 25,000 square feet. Morgan's 110,000 square feet sitting there, idle. So that's, you take matching funds, you got to take it out of service.
Thank you, Pat. Okay, now we need to revisit, we have just a couple minutes here before we go on. We have to revisit the agenda. We've kind of blown it out of the water, which is fine, but we need to, gather it back in. We totally kind of blew out of considering scheduling additional meetings, which was on for 7:50. We're okay with observer comments at this point. Now, in terms of creation of draft policy statements, does anyone want to go forward with those creation of draft policy statements? I'm not sure that there would be anything to be done. Okay, can I request then that there is a change to the agenda? So, oh, sorry, yes.
I don't understand the policy statements, because in my understanding, the school board establishes policies, and so I don't understand what kinds of policy statements you would be drafting in the first place.
Okay, I'm going to answer that one because I wrote those words down. And they came from Bruce Tabb, who's not here. Those were his words, were drafting policy statements. The idea is that he wanted to work, my understanding was that he wanted to start working on a deliverable, so that at the end of every meeting there was some kind of something, some kind of words toward the deliverable. That was the intention for that item. Does that help? So it could be called creation of statements of thought or consensus or something like that.
Okay, I just didn't understand that.
Yeah, that was my wording that I just took straight from Bruce. Okay, so that question. So I propose that we table the creation of whatever kind of statements that was supposed to happen at 8:10 and consider continue this discussion until 8:15 and then consider scheduling additional meetings and setting the timeline that was in there. Okay. Anybody? Oh. Okay, you want to add cards, okay. Let's see. Okay, so you're answering a question?
No, I'm just, I thought that was a call.
So did I. Okay, did you have a question? Okay, so the call is to change, to continue this conversation about, whatever we've been talking about with Dick, and, okay, it's my bedtime. And then at 8:15, go to scheduling additional meetings. Okay, we have green, all green except one blue. Okay, cool, we will do that. So, that having been done, Tor, you had the yellow, Jimmy, you had the yellow, Molly and Steve had blues, and also Meg has a blue. Okay, Tor.
Yeah, just a quick question for Dick. This may help clarify things a little bit, help for Lauren and myself, because I feel as you do, I want to know what I want to ask for before I ask for it. But my question is, are you asking, is your proposal that for consensus, that we ask them how long is their process, or ask them to do a deliverable? Which is it one or the other? You know?
Well, sort of both.
Okay.
I'd say sort of both. The whole idea was for the timeline, because we have no control over the time it's going to take them to do what we want them to do. You know? And
Right.
so what is that?
You have control over it.
Well, yeah, by budget, but as I say, for this committee, it's going to be a week, 2 weeks, it's going to be a month. So if we're talking about timelines for this committee, I thought it was important to know what that is.
Right.
And then the next question is, well, what do you want us to do? Is, okay, here's some potential options for them to look at and say, okay, it's going to take us a month to do that. Or it's going to take 2 weeks. That's all it was.
So not rope ourselves into specifics.
Not, you know what I'm saying, if they wanted to go and say, okay, you go ahead and start working on those, it's gonna take a month, maybe you start working on those, but, you know, be here at the next meeting and start massaging that, and have them ask us the questions to help them do what they need to do, as it relates to those options. All this discussion was, is trying to get a handle on the timeline for this committee, as it relates to the architects, when we get some options for this committee to take a look at. That's all the intent was, is not to lock us in, is just to get them going, and so we can have the confidence that we're gonna get something done by October 15th, you know, given their time frame that they need.
Okay.
They're gonna be key, whatever we do.
Okay. Jimmy, did you still have a question?
My question is regarding 6, 7, and 8. All of those include the 2 words community center. Is our responsibility to deal with and be concerned with what the city wants to do? Or is our responsibility and concern here with the Ellensburg School District and the Morgan Middle School? That seems to, now,
Okay.
comment?
Not yet.
My question is,
Okay, we
what's
got
the
that.
answer to that?
Okay, so, wait, oh, I thought you had a yellow, oh, green,
I
yeah.
have a green, I thought I would try to say I.
Go for it.
And that is, I think it is imperative that we find this out, because one of the issues was what was going to happen tomorrow.
Right.
So if we did decide to build new, and the city were to say they're gonna go ahead and do something as a community center, then we've answered the question of what happens to Morgan, and then we can have answered that question for the community. So I think it's imperative that we know what happens to Morgan, and whether it's the school district doing it or the city doing it, it doesn't matter to the citizen who is doing it, just that it gets done.
Okay, we have another answer to that.
I would use the word, I would replace the word imperative with irresponsible. I think it would be irresponsible of us to ignore the importance in the voters' minds corresponding to what happens to Morgan. I don't think we can ignore it.
Okay, so that's an answer.
I think, Jimmy, you're looking for a blue card, is what you're.
And I got you down, Jimmy. I got you down for a blue card later. Okay, we got a backup of yellows, and we have 1 minute for this discussion. Yeah?
I don't think I understand the scope of this committee, our responsibility, because if Paul wants to contact the architect as the superintendent of the school district and ask for 500 different cost estimates, what's the difference? That shouldn't affect us. And so we've just spent 25 minutes discussing something that he doesn't need our permission to do. And so I think I need some clarification on what is our role and what are we going to, I think I must, maybe I'm the only one, but I feel like we've just stepped across a weird line of responsibility and accountability that isn't ours to have.
Paul, would you like to speak to that, please?
Well, I could, but I could contact the architect and start saying, you know, we want a new building that looks exactly like Morgan. I'm being sarcastic. But what I really believe is that, you know, we need to kind of start looking at, one, we need a timeline of how long is this going to take. We know what the program is for 800 students or 900 students. For 900 students, we need 4 additional classrooms because that's all we need. So we know we kind of have an idea about square footage because classroom space in the 90s wing was kind of pretty good. So they can start putting some numbers together. And then when we get down to real specifics, they can adjust those because they'll all have it on a spreadsheet. And we'll just be able to adjust those numbers. What I think is good is having this committee identify some potential options, because I really believe there's an answer somewhere that we're going to get to, and we need to kind of start taking a look at what are some possibilities. And these are possibilities. May not be the exact one, but I do believe it's going to take the architect some time to start putting this together and to begin this process this way.
Okay, and it is now a couple minutes after we were going to stop talking about this. So I'm going to call the question here. Does the team want to have Paul contact NAC for how long it will take, how long it will take them to create cost estimates for the 8 options? Yes, Steve.
This is the second call for consensus that has happened since I raised my blue card with a comment. It's really distracting.
Okay. And we have several yellow cards, so.
They're probably distracting too.
Yeah. Okay. So, we are now past the 8:15 time, which is distracting me. So, let's see, we have, red cards, go ahead.
Yeah, just that, I think that we have to give Linda's the only person who can say how we're going to proceed. And I thought you said earlier that that any remaining comments would just remain on hold because we have to keep on going on the timeline. So I think it's a process problem too, unless you want to comment.
Into a red card.
Pardon?
My earlier blue card turns into a red card.
Okay, what's your red card?
I'm talking about process because we have to stay with the process and this is the facility.
You know, it seems to me that if we could be a little bit flexible on our ending time, it would solve a lot of problems. We're all getting a little bit stressed here in the last 10 minutes. If we could allow ourselves to go past actually any of these time gates without making a big deal out of it, including our ending time, it would really simplify things.
Any comments on that one? So now we have a different, we have a different recommendation. Okay, I'm just getting real confused. I need to stop. We had an 8:15 time. We were going to end and table all discussion on this question at 8:15. We have a red card saying we need to go over the time, and we have another red card saying we need to stop the time. I'm seeing Meg's got a red card, and then Dorothy's got a red card here. And in about 1 minute, I'm just going to stop this because we do have to go. Yes, Meg.
I think we should withdraw the question, because as Michelle said, we can ask that question, Paul can ask that question without our permission. I think what this whole discussion has really been about is that we need to move on toward creating options. And so let's just agree to that. And I know Dick is trying to do it on a particular schedule, so we stay on schedule, and I'm not sure I agree with that, but I think the whole point is, let's just agree, we need to focus, zero in on options is our next major task. I'm a little, that's it.
Okay. And there was a red card. Dorothy, did you have another process question or comment?
I think we need to stop this and go forward. We've had enough.
So we withdraw the call for consensus on that question. Are you proposing, Steve, that we go overtime?
I'm proposing that we allow ourselves that option.
Okay, so that, okay. At this point, what we have the agreement on is that we would table all discussion about this other stuff and talk about scheduling additional meetings. Is that something you'd be willing to go forward with? Okay, okay. And keep in mind what Steve said. Okay, so we have 8 minutes to talk about scheduling additional meetings. I saw cards, but I can't see.
They're the same. We were agreeing.
Okay, great. Okay, good. Good. Okay, so additional meetings. This was proposed for the agenda by Dorothy. Do you have any comments, or should we just jump right in?
We don't have enough time to handle this, and we either need to have meetings every other week or extend longer.
You mean every week?
Every week, excuse me. Or extend longer into the year. Obviously, we're not very effective at doing so much.
It takes a long time. There's a lot of discussion here. Okay, I think I saw, help me out here, was Jimmy, did you have yours up first? Okay.
I don't know.
Okay, Jimmy,
This is in response to the question of should we extend.
okay, yeah.
I do not believe we should extend. If we continue to keep ourselves under pressure to do something, maybe we will. For much of this discussion today, I was lost. Now, maybe it's me, but I don't know what we really accomplished that couldn't have been accomplished very quickly. We could have said, Dr. Ferris, please take care of that. Period. We don't need to jabber around for a half an hour whether or not we reach consensus on something he can do with the architects and bring that information to us. We're making a mountain out of a lot of molehill, a lot of mountains out of a lot of molehills. I took too long to say that.
Okay, Dorothy. Oh, Tor had a question first.
Not a question.
Comment.
I agree with Jimmy and Dorothy. I agree that I feel like I would like more time than what we have currently scheduled, but in setting future agendas, I think we should make a distinction between informational presentations and the hard nuts and bolts work of, let's have some discussion about getting towards making decisions. And I think we've had a lot of informational, and I want more informational. There's other things I want to know, but I think there also have to be these meaningful discussions, that we all get involved in about nuts and bolts.
Dorothy.
There have been 4 failed bonds. If it takes extra time to get ready for a bond that might pass, I think we should take that time and go into what we need to do and go for it. Otherwise, 5 failed bonds, you think you'll ever get one passed? It's getting pretty tight.
Okay, so we still have 5 minutes to talk about maybe agendas, timeframes, additional meetings. Yes, Marlene.
Do we need to decide that now? whether we extend it, it sounds like. That was a question, sorry. I don't think we need to decide that now.
Whether to have. There you go. Okay, so.
Yellow to blue.
Yeah, that was good. Usually goes the other way around. Okay, Meg and then.
No, I didn't.
Okay, Meg and then Lauren.
Is there a role for subcommittees in this process?
Anybody have an answer to that one?
Is there a public meetings issue with that?
Does
It
anybody
might
have?
have to be public, but it could be people meeting additionally without it having to be the whole group.
Okay, I'm an attorney, I can't answer that as a
I
legal
think-
advisor, but whether or not they're official subcommittees, subgroups of this team can meet together and discuss this, either over coffee or not over coffee. It is possible to do that. Please do not meet in groups of more than 7, I believe. I mean, who knows what quorum is for consensus? I've never gotten there, I don't know. So, but, you know, not large amounts of people, but you can talk together, and I would recommend it. Lauren?
I'll need to know if that happens.
You'll need to know if subcommittees are formed?
If subcommittees form, people get together, like, you know, if there's discussion happening, I'll need to know.
With how many people will you need to know? If 3 people get together?
I'm not totally sure. Let me get back and email the group.
That would be good, because we want to make sure that people are not hogtied about being able to talk with each other and with other community members. We need to get that clarified and not assume that we cannot talk with each other.
I'll get on that.
Great, great. And we'll need to know the source of that information as well. Thank you. So let's see, Lauren, yours was a blue, right? Dorothy, yours is a yellow. Question of clarification.
If we have informal groups that don't meet the same people all the time, do we still need to go through all the rigmarole? This kind of rigmarole bugs me.
Yeah, I'm not clear about that, and we want to make sure that it's clear. You can talk to each other. You can talk to each other. Do not stop talking to each other because you're afraid you're going to get arrested.
Is this just by phone, or can it be by email?
Do not reply at all. I don't know. I can't answer that one. And it sounds like Lauren's going to get information according to her sources. Lauren, you had a comment.
I just wanted to throw in the idea that we've talked, there have been suggestions of working in subgroups, and then people could get back together, whether that could happen during our regular meeting times. It wouldn't have to be a committee per se, but if we got together and discussed things in groups, and then everyone gets back together and here's what was said, that could be useful. That's my comment.
Okay, any other comments? I saw some new things down there. Okay, Michelle?
Well, I guess I missed the last meeting, but is the reason that I don't know what color I'm supposed to use at this point. The open public record, or public meetings issue, and not replying all, seems like if we're not making a decision on the email and we're engaging in conversation and Lauren's on the email, that's about as transparent as we're going to get, and it seems like a lot of this conversation could be done either on a Google Drive, through an ongoing conversation on it just seems like I don't know how, I don't know.
Okay, my understanding with that is that as an open public meeting, there must be notice about any discussion, consideration, blah, 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 whatever. You all were at the open, I think Marlene, you were at the open public meetings thing at the, okay. So yeah, that's my understanding of it. And because we take public comment, we are an open public meeting. That's my understanding. Joanne, yes.
So this is on a sub-meeting or another meeting. The architects that the school district hired did the Sela, are doing the Sela Middle School, which is under construction now. Same contractor that's building our science building at Central. And I was inquiring about getting a tour of the building under construction and was told that Friday mornings would be a good time if we, and so there was an offer that we could get a tour with a group of the Sela Middle School and just, and I believe the principal could potentially be there too, to just answer questions and that kind of thing. So I just want to, we don't have to make any decisions tonight, but I wanted to put that out there that, you know, if there's someone, if you're interested in maybe do it on a Friday, that might be a good time.
Okay,
And I
so
can arrange that.
Okay, so you would put an email out to everyone with the possible dates and some particulars of that?
Okay, sure.
Or however you want to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, it is 8:30, so hold your ideas there, unless we're going to go over, which I'm hearing people pack up. Remember that the next meeting is not here. It's in the city hall, in the city council chambers. I don't know how we're going to work that, but we are going to have to because this is full. Talk and work together between the meetings in small groups, unspecified number. Okay, so iron out some differences one-on-one. Any proposals you'd like to put together, information is fine to the group. Sleep well.
You want these cards to say?
Oh yeah, the cards, please put